Mitsubo Toyishi tapped the computer keyboard enthusiastically, securing another victory. He loved fantasy games that let him lose himself in magical worlds. They featured ancient legends and epic adventures, letting him create unique characters and explore vast universes full of secrets and dangers. Glancing at the wall clock, Toishi decided it was time to go to bed, since he had to be at work early the next morning. At 29, Toishi was a bachelor, slightly overweight, and an ordinary hired hand. Unhappy with his life and weighed down by a hopelessness he couldn't shake in real life, he escaped into computer games, light novels, and the internet. A grown man loved fantasy and other worlds, but Toishi knew those worlds existed only in his dreams, and no one could change reality. This dull reality felt unbearable to him because it seemed flat and predictable compared with the bright, exciting worlds of fantasy, where each day brought new challenges, heroic deeds, and the chance to be more than an ordinary person. He dreamed of becoming the chosen hero in a fantasy world. Usually, he switches on Nord mode when playing games, but if he ever reached that world, easy mode would not hurt him. This is all just a fantasy. The day is over and will lie down under the blanket. He then fell asleep or lost consciousness. Toichi imagined a fantasy world where a sweet bride held his hand. That world was truly wonderful. He was actually a middle-aged man about to turn 30, just an ordinary, overweight office worker who spent his time at his computer playing games and browsing the web before going to bed. It was supposed to be like that, but something happened. Toisha found himself in an unfamiliar place, amid dense vegetation with towering mountains in the background. He tried to calm down and realized his glasses were gone. He had lost a lot of weight, so his huge belly had disappeared, and he was alone with no one who could explain what was happening. A voice came from the computer screen floating in the air, promising to explain everything to Toisha and saying the young man was in the so-called other world. It's called Iliad. Toishia got the world she wanted, but it came very suddenly. His beloved dog was waiting for him at home, and no one could take care of her, while the computer reported that magic exists in this world, so we should begin to understand it. The voice explained that this world's development matches the Middle Ages of his world. Magic flourishes here, so life is better in some ways, while science is barely developed. Toisha asks the unseen speaker how to use magic, and the voice advises the young man to open the menu. Toisha followed the advice and opened his inventory, which showed a short sword. He checked his skills and was amazed that everything looked like a game, and his age here was 19, even though he was 29 in real life. He had many skill variations, including magic and fencing, and could learn them all through the skill menu, so we should ask what that means. The voice said the young man could earn skill points any time, and when he leveled up, he could spend those points in this menu to upgrade skills. And Toisha could also quickly unlearn skills that usually take years to upgrade. Best of all, he could now learn skills from the menu, had an adventurer's starter kit ready in his inventory, and a voice guided him on how to use it effectively. With only a few skills that he had just learned and did not understand, he decided to try them out somewhere. When Toisha asked what to do next, the voice said he could do whatever he wanted, become a hero or a villain, try to find his way home, or stay here until he died, which was not bad. The voice said it would check on him from time to time, and that he could contact it if he wanted. Then the computer shut down, and Toyishi's life in another world began. Sometime later, the young man reached a city in the kingdom of Calendale and realized he could understand the locals' speech and writing. They didn't look like ordinary people. Some wore collars and were clearly slaves. He wished he didn't understand how freedom worked in this world, and he didn't understand the hierarchy or the currency, so he had no idea about the current coin rate. After paying 5 large copper coins to enter the city, he still had 1 gold coin, a large copper coin, 2 silver coins, and 28 copper coins left. I wonder if he will run out of money and become a slave. To reach that goal, he had to travel far to learn the laws of this world, and anyone he asked would think he was crazy. The young man weighed fighting powerful opponents and rescuing princesses against something better, and wondered whether becoming the king of a harem was possible here. Running into a girl, like the one who just turned to look at him, would be nice. She was strikingly beautiful. Meanwhile, Tui Shi entered the Adventurers Guild building and greeted those inside. Behind the counter, the bald man said he had never seen the boy before, and Tuishi said he wanted to register because he had heard full registration could only be completed at the guild. Tuishi gave his name and showed a temporary ID valid for 3 days. The bald man said his name was Oost, and Tuishi was glad his body was not as fat as in the previous world, and put on a businesslike smile. The young man said he could wield a sword without armor, use wind magic, and perform minor healing. Oost said those were versatile skills, but that he needed to explain a few things required for registration. First, he must not cause trouble or use weapons or magic to make a ruckus in the city. Guild adventurers should help one another whenever possible, and killing anyone is forbidden. Ust then announced he would now test his abilities. The bald guild member then led the young man into a special training room. The adventurers present watched the newcomer with curiosity. The shield hero oozed and then turned to an adventurer named Ethan, who greeted the bald man and the new recruit to Ishi. Ethan lifted a wooden sword and said it was a good weapon for training. Toishi swung his weapon in response. The young man handed his short sword to the bald old man and asked him to keep it safe. In this other world, Tuishi saw many beautiful heroine girls. Warming up, he decided not to be embarrassed in front of the girls and asked Usta if he could use magic. The old man replied that if he killed his rival, he could not. But Tuishi wanted to try the magic he had learned as soon as the test began. Ust told Tuishi and Ethan to prepare and start the fight. Ethan lunged forward to strike, but Tuishi slipped aside and avoided the hit. He struck with the hilt of his weapon, and hearing the spectators' loud cries, they kept fighting. Eton said, surprised, that he had thought his opponent was just someone who liked to walk around in gear, but was actually a skilled swordsman. He wished he had assessed his opponent's strength and realized he could calculate all his moves, so he would have had every chance of winning. He countered again, knocked the sword from Ethan's hands, and kicked him hard in the stomach. Ethan was no easy opponent for Tui Shi, having developed physical resilience, swordsmanship, unarmed combat skills, and second-level wind magic. A young man used air vortex magic. Ethan's body shot into the air and flew back several meters, forcing Ust to declare victory for Tai Chi Mitsuba. The bald old man decided this man was not only skilled with a sword, but could also use magic, and he was quite good. Pleased, Toishi had just successfully used magic, and the spectators in the stands were cheering. The young man noticed the same girl he had met on the city street not long ago. Ust looked around and asked who else wanted to fight this guy. 3 huge men stepped forward to try. Ust congratulated the barely alive Ishii on becoming a celebrity and passing the test without a hitch. Now he needed to recover. The bald man gave the young man an adventurer's card. Ust said that normally everyone starts at F rank, but he gave him an E rank, and Tuishi could not see the point of raising the rank. The old man said that if he reached B rank, people would start to recognize him. At A rank, they would admire him, and at S rank, he would become a national hero. Tuishi admitted he still had a long way to go, and Ust wished for him to be the best. She went to the burning Golden Beds Hotel for each one. Ust from the Adventurers Guild had recommended this place, and he wanted to rent a room. At the counter, the man said that if the Adventurers Guild recommended him, One night with breakfast would cost 2 large coppers and 5 small ones, and renting a room for 10 days would be 2 silver and 5 medics. The innkeeper called Hoipina his maid and ordered her to take the guests to his room. The girl walked Tuishi to the room's door and wished him a pleasant stay. The boy liked the room and checked his status. Tuishi noticed he had received experience points for the guild test. With 6 skill points, he could learn a new skill, but it might be better to invest them in several practical skills since efficiency mattered most. Checking his inventory, the young man found the adventurer's set still there and could open the operation menu and call up the item's stats with his mind, which was very convenient. The adventurer's kit included a blanket, a backpack, 3 torches, a flask, a short sword, an 18-meter rope, and rations, and he wanted to know if putting them all in one container would make them count as a single item and let him ignore their size and weight. This needed testing in the world called Iliad, and he was curious about the adventures that lay ahead. A message from the voice of God appeared on the screen, asking him to call at any time. But Tuishi decided there were enough events for today. A young man remembered asking the girl to repeat himself. Tuishi never expected her to confess. She asked him to go out with her. A complete stranger made a bold confession to us or went out to buy some equipment for himself. Earlier today, he visited a gun shop in the city bazaar that had a wide variety of weapons. The shop smelled of iron and leather, and the young man had to pick one item from the many on display. Choosing your first armor is an important task, and a young shop employee volunteered to help him. Louis was a clerk. Tuishi in turn gave his name and told her he wanted to buy leather armor. Her pointed ears showed she was an elf. Tuishi remembered Louis suddenly hugging him. Despite other visitors watching them, the touch felt pleasant, and she smelled good with a soft, gentle body. Smiling, the girl helped him pick out the armor and cheerfully asked Tuishi which style of gloves and knee pads he preferred. He said he needed equipment for hand-to-hand and sword fighting, but he only had 9 silver coins, and Louis suggested reinforcing his knee pads and elbows with metal, while reinforcing the boots would cost slightly more than his budget. Wishing he liked this other world, he suddenly saw a huge black cat. Hearing how Louise addressed him, Tuishi realized the cat was the store's manager. This new world is full of wonders. Meanwhile, the girl offered him a weapon, but he wished it were a sword and could instead use wind magic. Louis asked about a guide for him. It's hard to believe Big Brother would use wind magic without a guide, since he knew it was very ineffective. Opening a small box with a tube at the bottom, she said it was the shop's cheapest conductor. It looked like a wooden stick, and Louis said energetically that he would immediately see the difference. When he tried the conductor, he realized it could fire wind bullets. The effect was absolutely stunning. Realizing he could draw magical energy through this conductor, the young man asked the girl if he could use it as a weapon. Ducking behind the counter, she said they had a cheap mace-shaped conductor for 6 silver coins and asked for a discount. The girl glanced at her boss cat, who made a small gesture, and Louis gave a discount on everything, including the entire purchase set. After buying gear at the weapon shop, Tuishi returned to the guild, and us told him he was more like a real adventurer now. Curious about his new weapon, the young man raised his pull-arm skill to level 2 just to try it. Tui started training. When he gained these abilities, he noticed the body's strengthening skill helped him run, and his improved swordsmanship made his body steadier. Tuichi realized he was now ready to fight in this new world. She appeared while he rested after an exhausting workout. Then she suggested that she and Tuishi be together, saying she had just become an adventurer. Afraid of fighting monsters alone, she tried joining a group, but it didn't work out. Trying to sound a little disappointed that it wasn't a confession, she said she wanted them to be partners as adventurers admitted she had watched him during his abilities test, noted his excellent sword skills and powerful magic, and even doubted he was a rookie like her. That's why she wants to be with him. Now Toishi understood why she had been so worried. He was glad she trusted him and thought she was very sweet, but he was sorry it wasn't a declaration of love. This was a different world where they could do anything to him if he wasn't careful, yet for some reason he trusted the girl. She felt she was holding something back from him, and he wanted to hear her real motive. Many people were stronger than him, so he wondered why she had turned to him. The girl replied that Toishi was most likely a former knight or mercenary. Though inexperienced, his strength was unusual. She wanted to follow someone strong. Anyone who saw Toishi would think the same, but the young man was sure the girl was hiding something. Ost assured Toishi that the girl could be trusted and offered to vouch for her. Tui told himself not to be so suspicious of the innocent girl, because although she was a newbie, she had a lot of knowledge and useful skills. He had to be careful since he'd never been on this land before. Not having decided about the group, he wouldn't worry yet, and held out his hand to give his name. The girl smiled, shook his hand, and introduced herself as Marl. Marl said she was happy to go on an adventure with Toyoshi, and when he saw how energetic she was, he suggested she accept the guild's request immediately. Marl was a little surprised the man wanted to take on a mission right away, and the young man said they were adventurers, so they were obliged to seek out adventure. He thought the girl was in no hurry to get down to business. He calmed Marl and said everything was fine, but if it became dangerous, they would run away, and he would protect her. These words pleased the girl, and her eyes lit up with joy. Toishi only told her that because he wanted an adventure, and after they accepted a quest from the guild, he would never tell her the truth, no matter what. They went outside, and Marl was surprised to see Toishu holding a weapon pulled from the void, which showed he knew how to use the treasury. Toishi called it storage, and in this world it was no ordinary ability. With many belongings, Marl would find travel difficult, and envied Toishi, who did not have to carry anything. The young man said the ability was so rare he should not tell anyone about its nature, and he asked what weapons Marl uses. Once he realized it was a sword, he invited the girl to a brief sparring match to see what she could do. With a scream, Marl charged her opponent. Aishi felt uneasy about the whole thing because her waist should have been straightened. Stretched out on the ground, the girl exposed her beautiful thighs and wished she had dodged the attack. He told the girl to forget about starting the group, but Marl ran after him. Clinging to his leg with all her strength, she made the young man see why other groups had rejected her. She was completely useless in battle and could not take part in any fight. Toishi earnestly told Marl to give up on becoming an adventurer and to return home to live a normal life. The girl said bitterly that she had nowhere else to go. Her eyes widened in horror as she pointed to the bushes and told Toishi someone was approaching. A huge, fang-toothed monster that was a boar. Fear made Marl sink to the ground. She couldn't believe the boar had appeared so quickly. He asked the girl to help him while he approached the monster from the front. Completely demoralized, Marl's body shook and she trembled. Of course, Toishi had considered fighting in another world, but he was under no obligation to protect anyone. Marl's piercing scream cut the young man's thoughts short and warned the adventurer about the boar's attack. The beast proved faster than Toishi expected, and he could neither understand why it was chasing him nor break free. Have Ishi pull out his club and prepare to fight the board. Free to use his skills, the young man summoned wind-cutting magic. The boar shot into the air and fell, lying motionless on the ground. Marl turned to Mr. Toishi and said she was glad he was alive. To make her point, she bluntly told the girl that adventurers inevitably face danger and would hardly be able to protect herself. Even though he does his best, he may not have the strength to care for others. Marl replied that normally F and E rank adventurers couldn't stand up to a boar, but she knew that and still went on the adventure. Tuishi promised to protect her, and the young man said any adventurer should protect herself. Her life is her own, and the girl admitted she had been a little reckless. Unable to become an adventurer and too weak to fight, she became a burden to Mr. Tuishi. He was the only one who protected her, and the one she wanted to emulate. Aishi placed his hand on the girl's head and said he was glad she was okay. Mal asked the young man if she could go down to the river to wash her clothes because she was very frightened when the boar came out. She wet herself from fear, and now she can't get married again. Mal looked closely at the stunned Ishi and asked if he could take her as his wife. Tuishi and Moral entered the forest together, where they met two goblins, and Moral warned the young man that they were approaching. Soon there were 5 of these monsters, and another boar prepared to attack them from behind. Tuishi observed that Mal is useless in combat, but very aware of her surroundings, which makes fighting much easier for him. The girl was the first to detect the boar, and as Uzit says, she probably has a strong sense of smell. Apparently being moral wasn't entirely useless. Eventually, Tuishi defeated all the monsters. There were 3 small boars and 29 goblins. Toshi was very scared in that fight. Real life and games are very different, and the old man they met at the guild said he was glad they returned alive. Moral was impressed by Mr. Tuishi's skill, as he defeated the monsters one by one, placed them in his treasure box, and took them home. And the young man explained that this was called inventory. Oost spread the adventurer's reward on the counter. Tuishi asked how he calculated it, and the master said it depended on the size and condition of the bodies, with small boars and goblins worth about 5 large coppers each. The old man asked how they would split the money, based on each person's contribution to the hunt, and Mal admitted she hadn't lifted a finger in the battle. Tui said Mal was his card, and she noticed the monsters before he warned about the attack. Even during the battle, she quickly told him how many enemies there were and where they were, so she deserves that number. Oost replied that despite this, the larger shares showed Tuishi did more during the battle. They will become famous adventurers, one using magic and swordsmanship and carrying a treasure box, the other a beautiful girl with an exceptional ability to detect opponents. USD knew they complemented each other well. Mal thanked Tuishi for today, and the young man thanked her as well. She said she wanted to do the guild quest together again next time. Tui headed to the hotel, and he thought the other world wasn't that bad. Entering his hotel room and getting into bed, he felt a severe headache and a dry mouth like a hangover. He was very thirsty and wanted a drink of water. A girl lay in his bed. Living freely in another world is much harder than he had expected. As they parted, Marl told Tuishi that she wasn't as useful as she'd like, but next time they could take a guild quest together. After the young man left, she told Ustu she wanted to go to the hotel since it was cheaper than this place, and the old man warned her to be careful because it was already dark. The girl was surprised to see Toishi in the tavern. He was having dinner and invited her to join him at the table. Marl told Tuishi she was glad to be staying at the same hotel as him. It was not a coincidence. The girl had only one goal, to get as close to the mister as possible no matter what. Filling the young man's glass, she thought Mr. Tuishi's operation had begun, and the young adventurer said that, thanks to her, he now had money in his wallet, and they should celebrate together. Raising their glasses, they toasted each other's health. When Marl began with small talk and asked Tuishi why he wanted to be an adventurer, Tuishi said he had trained with a teacher in his hometown in his spare time, wanted to see how far he could go, and now can't return home for various reasons. The girl realized he was avoiding the question, so she asked where he was from, and Tui answered that he was from Earth. Marl had never heard of that place and was sure it was far away. She is certain Mr. Toishi has black hair. His eyes are slightly pointed and almond-shaped, and his face is handsome with balanced features. Tall and well-proportioned, his build is not overly muscular. He seemed like a hero from the fairy tales she often heard at home. Marl realized she could not return home now, and the young man asked what she would do and if she had anyone to rely on. And she replied that the person she could rely on was sitting right in front of her. Marl confessed to the young man that she wanted to be his wife, no matter what happened today. They ran out of alcohol, so Marl ordered more for Toishi. Marl placed an order for 1 bottle of nectar. With no home to return to, she insisted Toishi try the drink so she would never have to return, even if only for today. Soon, Toishi could barely move his tongue after drinking his fill. Toishi told Marl he did not believe a girl her age would stay in a hotel with a man she had just met, and Marl realized he could not keep his mouth shut when he was drunk. Toishi muttered that she was too attractive to lose and that he had stayed drinking because he was worried about her. Marl told Toishi that whenever he protected her, she saw his gentle side and found it really cool, and even their meetings in the city felt like a fateful, God-blessed encounter. Even so, she fell in love with him, and Toishi wondered why she had become an adventurer. Suddenly, the girl announced she was a princess. 2 years ago, she was supposed to marry a scumbag prince from a neighboring country who was rumored to be a terrible person. She refused and ran away from the castle to become an adventurer. The young man found the story too cliché, and since she was a princess, it would be hard for him to spend time with her. So Marl suggested that the adventurer Toichi marry the princess. Embarrassed, Tui asked the girl whether she had no family. Rather than seeking adventures, she could have stayed in her hometown. Marl arched her back and asked Toshi if she was not pretty. Feeling a little dizzy, Toishi denied saying that. A young man drank too much and fell under the table. Mara leaned in and told him she was more worried about him than anyone else. He said she was too cute for him to get fully drunk. She told Toishi he could lie here for a while and she would take care of the rest. Marl was pleased because she had planned everything. He took her hand and lay beside her on the soft bed. Toshi woke up with a bad hangover. It was already bright outside. Surprised to find Marl sleeping beside him, he touched her chest in disbelief, and she blinked. Marl smiled mysteriously and said good morning to Toishi. The young man could not believe this was happening, and even screamed. Marl calmly asked him why he was so cruel. It seemed wrong for him to scream after spending the night with such a beautiful girl, and Toishi asked her why she was in his room. Marl said if he couldn't remember anything, she would tell him everything. A woman of suitable age shared a room with a man she knew, but Toishi-san drank himself senseless, became infatuated with her, and she suffered a lot. She now rightfully belongs to Toishi-san, and he can have as much fun with her as he wants. Wishing he had never heard that, he forced himself to calm down. Failing to take responsibility would destroy Marl's innocent image. Blushing, Marl admitted that Toishi-san was very energetic. When she said she was afraid, he hugged her from behind, covered her face with his hands, and asked her not to go into details. Guilt stopped him from looking at the girl, who asked if he was angry. Don't worry about what already happened. She's fine. Tui blamed himself for being wasteful because he could not even remember his first night with such a beauty. Then Marl gently hugs the young man and asks if they can do it again. At that moment, Hoipina knocked on the door and said she had come to clean the room, so he got out of bed and asked her to clean up so he could come back later. He and Marl rose from bed and dressed. Marl stood completely naked and felt no embarrassment. Toishi had to point out that she looked very erotic when she dressed, and the girl laughed, assuming he was highly aroused. Toichi asked the girl to calm down and promised that he would protect her if any problems arose. Then, they went to have breakfast together. Marl and Toichi was walking down the street in town when the girl said it looked like a date. Toichi had never imagined he could hang out with a pretty girl like Marl in his old world. and though he had been happy with everything there except his extra weight, life here felt like a dream. They entered the gun shop and were greeted by a new girl, Tuishi Aura. Tuichi asked to look over everything again, because the club he bought here had helped him deal with the monsters but was no longer usable, so he went back to choose another weapon. He asked Marl if she had ever been to the store before, and she admitted she had been there a couple of times. Then she turned to the salesman and said he would like to choose a defensive weapon for the next battle. Cat Lewis stepped forward to serve Marl. Examining Toshi's club, he said the weapon was in bad shape. The weapon can be used in combat and is believed to be for mages in the rear because mages do not fight on the front lines. Tui told the talking cat that he wanted a more durable weapon. Lewis asked about their budget, and the boy asked Marl what she planned to buy. Marl replied she was interested in a light crossbow she could use. After choosing everything he needed, Tuishi asked for a discount, but the cab said he would give them 24 crossbow arrows as a favor, and although it was a stingy offer, the young man was forced to accept it. Marl chose a crossbow, and Tuishi Lewis recommended a fighting staff almost identical to his previous one, which proved very useful. Picking up a crossbow, Marl felt like a true adventurer and grew more self-confident. She was never afraid to take any journey because Toyoshi-san was by her side. After that, Toichi trained for a long time. He crossed swords with Ethan, among others. Marl has clearly been training well with the other adventurers. Marl wasn't stronger than Toichi, but he was clearly getting stronger. Thanks to training, Ishish's level kept rising, and he could buy skill points for himself, so he needed to strengthen his offensive spells, recovery magic, and hone the magical abilities he gained on his first day in this world. But if he wanted to fantasize, he would have to rely on magic at a minimum. The young man invested 3 skill points into each, raising his fire, water, and earth magic. At level 2, the skill point system let him learn different skill types and tiers. Entering the world of Eliard for the first time, a mysterious voice spoke to him, and he wanted to ask many things, including why he had become 19 years old. He had many skills and wondered whether hand-to-hand combat, archery, and cooking were available from level 1, since that matched his experience in the previous world, where he learned archery as a child, mastered negotiations while working in hotels, and always cooked his own meals. In martial arts, the first level is an experienced practitioner. The second is a title holder. The third is a teacher class. The fourth is a superior class. And the fifth earns the Superman class. Despite that, Tuiishi did not fully trust the mysterious voice, so he went to Amaro and spoke to her. He invited her to practice magic with him, and Ethan asked him to be gentler with the girl. Smiling mysteriously, Tuiishi said he had another magic to use that needed testing on Marl, and the young man thought that if he told the girl he had gained it through skill points, she would start working with him again. Once Marla agreed, Tuiishi ordered her to shoot him with a crossbow. He calmed the startled girl, and she fired. Tuisha activated the earth wall magic. An arrow stuck in the wall without injuring the young man, as expected. The magic lived up to its name and kept him well protected, so he ordered Morale to shoot again. Another arrow from his crossbow was stopped by a wall of water created by her new magic, which froze the projectile. When the water wall hit, it pierced enemies and froze them from the inside, making it a truly deadly ability. Ethan felt relieved that the magic that had injured him was not like this, but Tuishi also had fire magic, and Uzi warned the boy it was very dangerous and would get them in trouble if the guild caught fire. She learned that a magic arrow could be used as pure Tier 1 magic, and when he tried to shoot one from the hotel window into the sky, it showed magic arrows needed no attributes. And even at Tier 1, it was more dangerous than attribute magic. Pure magic was enough that he could easily raise it to Tier 2. He then increased his restoration magic to level 2. Level 1 heals and level 2 neutralizes poisons, including alcohol. Right now, Toishi's most important skill was his judging eye, and he was still tormented by who Moral really was. Seeing him stare, the girl asked why he looked at her so seriously. Tui asked again why Mal became an adventurer, and Mal said she was the first princess of a certain country, and they tried to marry her off to a scoundrel prince from a neighboring country, so she ran away from home. She doesn't want to go home now, and in 3 years, her younger sister will take her place as the prince's wife, so she can return then. Using his new ability to read eyes, Toishi discovered that Mal's real name was Mario Vlank Miscronia, the first princess of Miscronia. Toishi froze, unsure what to do. He recalled how, as a humble adventurer, he had spent more than one night with a real princess. He was now sure Mal was still hiding something from him. Her worries were about the knights and mercenaries, but she had in fact left the noble country. Mal said Toshisan would remain an adventurer, grow stronger, become a feudal lord, and aim for the harem. And the young man did not object, though it felt strange coming from a girl. He saw nothing wrong with a harem, and thought it was normal for a male adventurer to have multiple wives, since adventurers' children had strong genes and often inherited their parents' best traits. Toishi still didn't grasp the ordinary ways of the world, and Mal explained that adventurers who face life-threatening situations often die because the physical strain is too great to handle alone. The girl admitted she is very jealous and cannot stand anyone taking her first partner to Yishi-san. Only Toshi hears her say this. Finding Mal quite cute, the young man hugged and kissed her. Moral nearly cried from emotion. She collapsed onto the bed. Leaning toward her, Toshi was asked if he would keep her from sleeping at night again, and he said it depended on her. When the girl fell asleep, Toishi thought that if she was chaste, they would run away together. Determined, he set out to make this girl happy. Having learned shooting, Toishi decided to take Mal's light crossbow to try to lift his spirits. Training this way lets you gain a new skill, and to save points, it's best to learn it from the start through training. Just then, Mal ran up to him and said they had been assigned to clear out the goblins. The guild was crowded, and it looked like many new orders had arrived. By then, Toishi was already popular with adventurers, who called him a wizard. The youth assumed it was because he had been practicing magic for the past few days. That likely made him stand out, and when he thought about it, he realized he had not seen a single magician in the guild's training ground. They were about to exterminate the goblins, the Knight's Order, and other troops, and Toishi thought the task would be easy. USD assigned the task this time to eliminate all the goblins. The group must attack the goblin village in the forest, about half a day's journey away. If they go on foot from the city, the reward for destroying each goblin is 5 large copper coins. The guild offered 2 silver coins per person for taking part in the cleanup, but warned it would not pay anyone who did not work. The gathering was set for tonight after the night bell. They might be stuck in the forest overnight, and the mission could last about 2 days, so everyone needed to bring food. It reminded me that the guild counter sells great canned goods at low prices. Toishi and Mal chose to prepare thoroughly for the mission. They bought 3 days' worth of canned food, took a few extra blankets, and a flashlight would be useful on this mission. A barrel of water was brought into the storage room, and after a moment's thought, Toshi added 2 more. Oost was amazed by how much Toishi's magic box could hold. A young man said he never fills it completely, so he does not even know its exact capacity. At last, it was time to move out. Many adventurers and members of the knightly order had gathered at the designated place. Toishi felt confident of success because their training steadily raised their level. They could handle more weapons, and Mal learned to shoot. Mitsubo Toi looked forward to the adventures that lay ahead. Toishi's magic is a skill system that can create a fire blade, and he wants to know how to fight a real wizard, so it would be useful to see her abilities. Meanwhile, the squad set out with a level 10 scout, a veteran adventurer at the front, followed by the main block of knights. The newcomers and the column moved a short distance. They encountered only a few minor monster attacks and had almost no trouble. Knights held the front to protect the troops, while the others covered the rear. The troop formation protected the wizards, but it was odd that earlier, when they met the goblins tried to separate them and attacked only a few units. The goblin attacks came without warning, and just then a huge horde was spotted, so everyone was ordered to get ready. Monsters could be heard approaching, and the front did not seem to be holding. He wanted her to turn tomorrow and asked her not to move forward. Goblins appeared ahead and charged the adventurers. Toishi joined the others in close combat against the monsters, killing them one after another. Toishi then noticed with surprise that the goblins barely fought and ran past, and Marl assumed they were fleeing something. Marl had a knack for sensing danger, and she seemed to have noticed something. Something far stronger than the goblins loomed, and the adventurers heard a wild cry ahead. Seeing the dead adventurer, they concluded the person chasing the goblins could kill a man with a single blow. This creature was a real monster compared to the goblins. Toishi calmed the girl and reassured her that everything would be fine. As the screams and shouts drew nearer, Toishi asked Marl to trust her own knowledge. According to the girl, it was the one that fed on goblins, a creature shrouded in the mystery of trolls. A terrible roar and heavy stomping signaled that a dangerous man had appeared before them. Everyone had assumed this quest was a goblin hunt, and no one expected the current situation. Toishi warned an adventurer approaching the wounded man about the danger. Attacking from the flank and the rear, the adventurers and knights tried to use the troll's lack of agility against him. But the counterattack failed, and the monster was only slightly wounded. The attackers themselves were wounded. The leader warned the adventurers not to lower their guard after losing their knights and ordered everyone to fall back. Toishi rejected the decision because Marl had told him about the troll's weaknesses. Because minor injuries healed almost instantly, the young man chose to use fire magic. His regeneration could not withstand the intense fire. Toishi fired a flaming arrow at the troll. The leader was stunned that Toishi had fire magic. Toishi stopped the monster's regeneration with a single blow. The troll let out a terrible roar, and the knight's armor clanked. Toishi triggered the energy blast, unleashing a deafening explosion. A counterattack hit the wounded monster. Using the adventurer's shields, the leader stood close to the troll, sword in hand. They killed the troll by using shields as steps in a coordinated move that allowed them to defeat the large monster. The knight's leader killed the troll skillfully. He thanked Toishi for his strong support and said that because of it, they escaped with few losses. The surprise was not over when 3 more monsters appeared before the fighters. Toishi focused his magic and fired a blast of energy at the monsters. The knight's leader stepped forward and, over the cries of the wounded trolls, ordered the wounded to fall back. The magician Toishi suddenly stepped forward. The young man realized that although the monster was larger, its weak spots matched a human's, so he should aim for the head. He swung at one of them, and the blow landed. 2 more appeared beside the defeated monster, so the adventurers had to retreat. One attack from the troll came close to hitting its target. Toishi deftly dodged the strike and hit the beast hard on the head with his weapon. A huge monster blocked his path, and it seemed there would be no end to them. Toishi's battle staff was lodged in the previous monster's head, and he could not pull it free. Facing such an opponent unarmed was dangerous. The situation was becoming critical. Only his dagger and weakened magic were left, but Toishi could still escape the battlefield. A crossbow bolt lodged in the monster's paw caught his eye. Moral fired at close range to give Toishi a chance to retreat. As a result, the monster shifted its attention away, and the young man concentrated the rest of his magic on the dagger to deliver the decisive blow. All his remaining strength went into the blow. A terrible screech rang out, and Twishy saw the dagger was broken. With no weapon left, he had only his fist to fill with magic. Then Toishi swung and hit his opponent. With the monster defeated, Tuishi looked sadly at the broken dagger, but fortunately, the staff was intact. Mal threw herself into Toy's arms and cried. Seeing he was covered in blood, she concluded he was badly injured. Ishi calmed the girl, healed her, and scolded her for not obeying his order to run away. Stroking her head, he said he had kept his promise again and would protect her no matter what. Mal burst into tears of joy, and Toishi let out a relieved sigh. Ethan stepped forward and asked if he could pet the girl's head too. This time, it's over. The knights also dealt with the trolls. The goblins appear to have calmed down, but 3 adventurers died. 7 were wounded, 5 of them seriously. 6 knights suffered moderate wounds. The rest had minor injuries, but injury statistics alone cannot show the full severity. Ethan shook the woman's hand and said that participants on the same quest should always help each other. He said he felt too weak to hold a spear and wondered if restoration magic could heal it. Sitting by the fire, Toishi apologized for not healing his wound completely, and Ethan regretted that Miss Witch could not heal him. Marl handed Tuishi water and thanked him for the work he'd done. They had used healing magic countless times, and there was no time to relax now. Toishi was relieved that the 3 barrels of clean water he collected from the guild had helped his treatment. Even the seriously injured recovered easily and could now walk the return route without any problems. During the fight with the last troll, Tuishi fought desperately to protect Marl, using the magic in his body instead of a weapon and calling on the fist skill, which had grown stronger. 6 trolls attacked them, and he killed 3 alone, so he can expect a significant share of the rewards. Toichi sat on a log beside Marl, feeling happy. First, Captain Waltz, leader of the Crossroads Knights, and Lynette, commander of the mage platoon, approached the mage and thanked him for his invaluable help in the battle. Walt admitted they beat the trolls with minimal losses because of him and said his strength merits an A rank. The young man said he was only an E rank adventurer, having become one just 10 days ago, and this was his second quest. Lynette stared at the young man in disbelief and assumed he was joking. The captain noted how much training it took to become that kind of adventurer, and Toishi said the village masters taught him magic and combat. In fact, he had come from another world, and a strange voice had somehow helped him. Waltz offered his hand to Tuishi and said his success had greatly helped his knights, and if he wanted a reward, he should hand over his contacts. A young man said he would be near the central square in the southern district of the Flamed Avon, and the quest to clear out the goblins was now finished. After dawn, several knights went out to scout just in case, but they found the goblin village completely destroyed. The trolls were responsible, so the first goblins fled their attack. Some died, but others survived, and it was a victory. Everything was fine now. Lynette went up to the young man and told him the knights had noticed him, but Tuishi couldn't understand what that meant. The girl told him not to associate with those people, and Tuishi said he had already decided not to join them. After going to another world and giving up many things, he still didn't trust the knights, and Marl is worried about them. Is there a connection? Something about what was happening in the kingdom was eluding him. Across the world of Eliad, not just in the kingdom of Calendale, a single person possessed the greatest power. It was the voice of God, that mysterious voice. Tuishi had no idea how to keep freedom in another world. Following a deadly battle with the monsters, the adventurers returned to the guild and were welcomed with warmth and joy. Curious, Toishi and Maro looked at the city's resident, who smiled sincerely at them. The townspeople were grateful to them now that the crossroads were safe again. Protecting the people of the crossroads was the price of the adventurers' lives, and that's the knight's job. But Waltz worried about one thing. Do I need to report Moral to the guild? It was her first multi-day raid, so she was naturally tired. Ethan suggested the young people, after receiving their reward, relax and have a drink at the tavern. Ethan claimed he had killed 1 or 2 goblins. Oost welcomed the adventurers back and said he had been worried when they went to the goblin village, but was relieved they were all safe. They had lost 3 colleagues. A sudden attack by trolls caused this. If it weren't for the knights, they would have all died. Afterward, the old man wanted to check their cards. When Toisha asked what would happen to the dead adventurers the knights had carried away, the master replied that they would be buried in the city cemetery and their personal belongings would be given to their families. After examining Toysha and Moral's maps, Ost could not believe the magician had destroyed 3 trolls. Ethan confirmed it, saying he personally saw this guy fry a troll with fire magic. Another adventurer confirmed he stabbed the second troll with his staff, and Mal said Mr. Tuyishi tore the last one apart with his bare hands. Tuai felt awkward about the praise, but he had already been nicknamed a wizard. He pulled charred troll corpses from his magic chest, which surprised everyone. And the old man said happily that the skin and bones would be used for armor. The fat would go to alchemists, and the meat would sell for a good price. But the downside was that all of them had damaged heads. Even so, those trolls are costly, and the guild encourages adventurers who are ready to bring magical monsters to the guild. Because the reward for joining the raid was only 2 silver coins, Oost couldn't give the exact total yet, but said he was owed about 30 gold for the troll and another 5 for defeating it. The total was 105 gold pieces, though that was only an estimate. Marl was stunned to learn they'd get that much money for a single quest, and Tuishi could hardly imagine the sum, since it far exceeded an adventurer's usual pay. After finishing the quest, the adventurers celebrated loudly and happily, toasting and draining their glasses. When Tuishi received the reward for the conquest, about 20 other adventurers declared they would join. The young man stopped at a bar, where a 5 gold coin charge let him eat and drink as much as he wanted, better than trembling over every coin. The girls were very interested in Mr. Tuishi's personality and asked him about his adventures. The young man noticed some of the guys were jealous and announced that second food would be completely free today. Moral smiled and told the girls bothering Ishi to keep their hands off him. By late evening, Marl and Tuyishi were finally home. Marl fell asleep before Tuyishi got into bed. He's already used to this life, but before coming to Eliard and meeting Marl, he was an ordinary 29-year-old on Earth, repeating the same daily routine. And now Marl fills his days with adventures and loves him. Leaning toward her, he thanked her. Marl opened her eyes and said that even if he said nice things, it was unforgivable for him to look at other girls, and Tuishi asked if she was really worried about it. It looked just like that, and he was worried about her. During the quest, when Marl jumped out, he tried to stay calm because if Tuishi lost, he would lose his reason to live in this world. Marl was relieved to learn that Tuishi wasn't indifferent to her, but he asked her not to interrupt. Lying on her bed, he said this impudent man was going to attack her now. Late in the morning, Marl was still in bed, and Tushi told her it would soon be daytime and she should get up, to which Marl said staying up until morning was cruel. As a result, she might have a child, though her adventuring guild used contraceptive magic. Female adventurers can use the guild's service. If necessary, you can get contraceptive magic in advance. If you become pregnant, you will be forced to stop adventuring. Tui realized something was wrong. It was strange that whenever an adventurer became pregnant and the group broke up, the other adventurers vanished. Finding a new band is hard and complicated, which explains it all. And Marl is now in a band with him, so she must have been through a lot. Marl said some are vulgar demons in human form, which is why most adventurers learn contraceptive magic. Tawisha glanced at the girl's figure, and the girl blushed and asked what kind of look that was. Adventurers get married all the time. Toishi was deciding whether to marry Marl, but he wanted to know more about her, and today they were set to find out how much money they would pay him for the trolls. Before that, he set a date with Marl, told her to get dressed quickly, and she took his hand as they went to the guild. But note the moral point that they went to the gun store. Twishy said he'd broken his dagger in yesterday's battle, and an adventurer without a weapon was useless. Lewis and the cat greeted the young men and asked Toishi what he needed this time. Toishi said he needed a sword that could withstand his magic and that he had 10 gold pieces. A short sword on the counter caught the young people's attention. He looked very elegant, so she suggested Marl look at the new crossbow, which she would like. Toishi had to choose one of 2 swords, because the other weapons were much more expensive. The mithril sword had a wide guard. Its blade was straight, hard, and strong, and it was rumored to be indestructible and to possess great magical power. That means it will not break, even if he puts his own magic into it. The young man liked the blade a lot. He turned to Lewis and asked if, since he was buying such a cool sword, Lewis could give him a small discount. And the cat asked about the mithril dagger he had been looking at earlier. Lewis warned that Toishi would ruin him because the dagger contains a pearl of wind magic whose power speeds movement and makes weapons lighter. Lewis offered to accept 24 coins for both items instead of 25 if that would help. He put 24 coins on the table, which surprised the cat at how much money he had, and the young man explained that he had sold the carcasses of 3 trolls and expected them to appear on the market soon. Outside, the girl asked Marl what kind of sword he had bought, and he said he was looking forward to trying it, while Marl happily assumed Toishi had bought the dagger for her. Happily, the girl jumped onto the pavement, and Toishi asked where she was going. Marl reminded him he had promised her a date. First, Captain Waltz reported to the Concerned Knights Guild that the Crossroads Knights campaign was targeting goblins. Aside from them, the trolls were killed, and the man he mentioned is Misubo Toishi. Marl and Twishy walked through the city without a care, while the young man bought her a delicious ice cream. Marl wanted to dress up a little. He opened his storage to make space for the clothes they'd buy, since he also wanted to see Marlin's cute clothes. They visited every shop where the girl picked the outfits she liked. Marl was on cloud 9. It had been a long time since she shopped like that. She felt tired afterward because she had overdone it a bit. It surprised him that most shops in this world sell used clothes because sewing is expensive and ordinary people buy clothes when they can make them and sell them when others want to buy, creating a vicious circle. After buying so many clothes, they had to wear them tonight. Morrow was determined to dress as a dancer. I wish she had then taken out the dagger he bought from the store and handed it to Marl, saying it was another gift for her. Deeply moved, Marl was touched by this offering. The young man asked them to accept the gift without objection, and Marl accepted it gratefully. Everyone nearby rushed over to congratulate them. Toishi found what was happening around him strange and thought it might be an unfamiliar custom. At the hotel, Hoipina met them and learned about Toisha's gift for tomorrow. In a mysterious tone, she asked Marl whether she was happy, because it was a mithril proposal. When her husband offered her the mithril, Whitepina remembered she simply melted. The owner of the blazing anvil was her husband, she explained. Marl did not know the owner's daughter was Hoipina. Toishi apologized for interrupting the girls' conversation, but what does the mythological gift mean? They exchanged puzzled, mysterious looks. Rudely, Hoipina asked the young man why he had given the dagger to Morel. He said he thought she liked it, and Morel then began to cry. He hugged the girl and said he did not understand her. Then he turned to Hoipena and asked her to explain everything. The girl said that when an ordinary man gives a woman a mithril dagger, he is claiming her and expects her to guard her chastity with it. That gesture was an offer, but Twishy didn't realize it. He invited Marl to dinner, but Hoipena refused to leave him alone with a girl he had made cry. The young man apologized sincerely for causing pain. He didn't know the gift would mean so much. He apologized for the false proposal, then corrected himself and acknowledged he had acted inappropriately. He decided to present the gift differently, calm himself, and then act directly. Toishi dropped to one knee in front of Marl and held the dagger out toward him. Clutching the gift to her chest, she started crying again. Hoipena said goodbye, saying it was time for her to leave, while Tui asked Marl to stop the waterfall of tears. She hugged Tuyishi, kissed him, and said she was very happy. Both realized at once that the night would be long. Marl and Twashi woke up late this morning. Toichi kissed her tenderly, and she asked whether she had woken him. After a lively night, it was time to go to dinner. Seeing the young people's satisfied faces, Hoipena understood everything and put an envelope addressed to Tuishi on the table. An invitation arrived to visit the garrison of the Knights of the Crossroads in the Kingdom of Calendale, and Marl said that if the knights were inviting, that was excellent. Marl Twashi's reaction barely bothered him. If the knights were their opponents, he would simply ignore the invitation. The young man asked Marl to stay in the guild while he figured out what was happening. Crossroads is a city in the Kingdom of Calendale. Every 5 years, the city chooses a new patroness. The candidate must be a nobleman and of a rank no lower than count. The county ranks ran from highest to lowest: Duke, Marquis, Earl, Viscount, Baron, Quasi-Baron. Marl explained it to him. The Crossroads Knight garrison was stationed in the Western District. So why was Twishy called here? Waiting for what came next, the young man checked his status, and with several training points, raised his general's sword and long weapon skill to 4, and both his fighting spirit and magic to level 3. Then he saw someone approaching, and the man apologized for keeping him waiting and challenged him to a fight. Regretting giving the man any chance, the young man asked why they had arranged the training after the instructor declared the man the winner. Those at the training noticed not only impressive magic skills, but also rare sword techniques from this guy. Twaining, leader of the Knights of the Crossroads, invited Tui Shi to become one of their kendo instructors. The young man told the nobleman it was a great honor, but he preferred the free, easy life of an adventurer and said his manners were rough. Twaining pointed to instructor Vows and said Vows worked with adventurers and should see this one himself. They want to reward him for killing the trolls, but the law bars giving money directly, so they offer a dagger as payment. Calming herself, she carefully picked up the weapon and activated the appraiser's eye. A simple yet beautiful stone sat inside the dagger. The blade was well made and bore a carved design that Twishy could not understand. Twining said contentedly that he liked the dagger, but the young man had heard Twishi was strong in magic and realized the true purpose of his visit here had not yet been revealed. Marx, leader of the Crossroads Knights Magical Corps and an honorary baron, greeted Tuyishi on behalf of the Royal Guard. He remembered a magical cavalry station beside the night training ground. Marx grabbed the young man by his clothes. He suggested we discuss everything with Mr. Twaining. Pointing to a huge magic ball, the Baron explained it was an item that tested conditions, digitizing and displaying a person's magical skills and abilities. Twishi wasn't sure whether it would be bad if they found out about his skills now. But when Mark suggested he place his hand on the crystal ball, there was no reason to refuse, so the young man boldly reached out. All eyes turned to the magic ball when Hishi's status finally appeared. And although it looked ordinary at first glance, it was actually astonishing. Taken aback, Marx asked the young man where he came from, and Tuishi said he was from Deko and asked the Baron why he wanted to know, as the conversation seemed to have taken a bad turn. No one there could believe Toishi was level 12. The power and amount of his magic were incredible, and his kendo and longsword skills were level 4, so Walt swallowed nervously, thinking Toishi might have reached that level before coming here. That man was clearly a hero. Twining suggested Tuishi came from a wealthy family. The youth said he was wrong, and the Crossroads Knights leader said it did not matter where he came from. Mark added that whenever a good person gains a level, their abilities rise by 1 to 3 points, and such high magical power is abnormal. Toishi is clearly a hero. The young man reluctantly agreed, asked what happens to those who become heroes, and was told they have many responsibilities. Firstly, the hero must report his location to the guard and the guild wherever he is, and he must answer and fulfill any requests from the government. Twining said there was a second, more troublesome duty, but it had advantages, such as free movement that would let the holder travel freely between countries, and the young man asked what that second obligation involved. Marx said that when someone carries out government assignments, the state where they are located covers all expenses, but if they act as an adventurer, that request does not count. Toishi expected stricter rules, but was still surprised. The hero defends not only Callendale, but also his country. What could be so dangerous that it threatens the world? Twining studied the young man and said the country needed a hero's strength. It would not be without cost, since most requests were to destroy troublesome monsters. Toishi asked the leader in disbelief whether this means that heroes abroad only serve as a force to fight monsters. Seeing Twining's embarrassed face, the young man told the Count not to think the worst, and said he only wanted to avoid a quarrel with the government. Toishi remembered similar stories from his world, such as the end of the hero. With Tuishi's consent, Twining said he would be sent to the capital later to register officially as a hero, and that they should now celebrate the birth of a new hero. Mark told the boy in a solemn voice that he was Callendale's first hero in 50 years, and that, though it would be difficult, he had to try. Toishi suddenly smelled something strange. The young man turned to the magicians around him and asked them to explain a little about magic, because he was self-taught and knew only the 4 basic attributes and pure magic. The professional magicians gladly promised to tell him everything, and the young man realized that in this world, being a servant was not shameful. His life belongs to him, and he will live it as he chooses. Glad to see Tuishi back, Marl asked what the knights had told him, and Tuishi calmly replied that they had certified him as a hero. The guilds did not believe his story at first, but Toishi said he would soon have to go to the capital to get official certification because the status check confirmed he was a hero. Toishi saw Marl's worried face and asked if she was okay. The girl said that in this country being a hero is a very serious matter, and asked whether he understood. Marl stepped closer to Tuishi and asked the question again with concern in her voice. Armed horsemen dressed in black and wearing masks hurried toward the crossroads. They targeted the hero Mitsubo Tuishi. Oost agreed with Marl that being a hero was admirable, but he did not share her anger. Toishi couldn't understand why everyone was so serious, so Marl took his hand and led him outside. Heroes are a mutation of humanity, appearing about once in hundreds of thousands or even once in 1,000,000 people, with normal physical strength but magical power, 2 to 6 times that of an ordinary person. A treaty made 500 years ago declared that heroes belong to no single state. They serve as a global force against threats to humanity, and every country helps protect and support them. The Demon King, who once conquered the world, was also a hero. Back home, Twishy and Mal arrived, and the girl sank onto the bed with a soft sigh. To be fair, she admitted he doesn't know what it's like to be a hero here, because heroes fight the strongest monsters beyond the country's borders, and the system is meant to kill them since they can't be controlled. Society dislikes heroes because many believe a single hero can match an entire nation's army, which any country views as a serious threat. If the hero unleashes such violent disorder, the army will be powerless, and with the citizens' support, he can easily topple any ruler. This is why the royal family and nobles fear heroes. They find it easier to eliminate anyone they cannot control as quickly as possible, and the enemy will most likely begin with reconnaissance. Twice could barely believe it. They had planned to commit murder, and the real reason there had been no heroes in Calendale for the past 50 years was that the kingdom quietly destroyed them before they could register. A story he had heard once, and now he understood Mal's reaction. Despite his limited knowledge of the country's traditions and beliefs, one such belief is that some deeply religious nobles see heroes as disturbing the world's harmony and therefore have anti-heroes who hunt them. For over 50 years, the kingdom has been executing certified heroes under the cover of faith and royal protection. And although Moral is from another country's royal family, she still holds great authority here, so Toishi refused to let them kill him over that. He asked the girl directly whether she truly believed they were coming to kill him, and Mal said it was possible, so he wondered what he planned to do now. Seeing his skill statuses already marked, the young man realized they should join forces, and he still had a chance. If Calendale sent assassins after him, he needed to act immediately. Toishi turned to Mal and asked if defeating monsters helps you level up, and if leveling up makes you stronger, and Mal confirmed it. Strength grows with each level, and the young man grinned and said he had an idea. Mal guessed and asked if she should use her power to protect herself, and Toishi said she was exactly right. They would go hunting monsters now, so he needed to get stronger and control his power better. It also reduces the risk that morale will be held hostage when force cannot be used, so cunning must be used. Toishi said he was going on a hike and invited the girl to follow him, and Mal replied that she would go wherever Mr. Toishi went. She planned to follow him and improve her skills during the hike. The girl immediately drew her dagger to follow Toishi. They hugged, and the young man apologized for dragging her into this, warning that if they acted carelessly, all of Calendale would turn against them. Turning to the knights at first may have been a mistake, but Marl told the young man not to dwell on it, since he was no longer alone. Grateful for her support, he thanked the girl and felt so happy he could cry. He said he needed to buy weapons, care products, food, and magic items. Then he asked the girl how difficult it was to merge with the guild, and she said it was impossible. The guild serves the kingdom. Its main role is to find heroes, send adventurers to kill monsters, and identify those who will achieve outstanding results. It also manages population control, workforce development, security, and cheap labor, so the system works on many levels. And whoever designed it was very clever. Toishi told Mal they were leaving immediately and had to take only the bare necessities, even though he hadn't paid for the accommodation yet. Hoi Pinho expected to rent a house in the city. She decided that Toishi would propose tomorrow and would settle down somewhere in the city. Hoi Pingia asked where they would settle. Telyor replied that he was at the crossroads, that he promised to contact him as soon as he could settle things, and that they were leaving tomorrow at dawn. Ishi believed it would take several days before the killers realized they had escaped from the crossroads. They left the crossroads in the morning. The young man generously stocked the camp with supplies, and they spent about 50 gold in just an hour. They moved through the city streets with care and caution. Luckily, the city gates stood open, and the voices of the crowd came from near the fortress wall. Twishy chose to go beyond the reach of the Crossroads Knights, and Mal suggested heading into the southeastern forest, where rumors say ancient ruins lie deep inside, and if they go through the forest, they will soon find themselves in the kingdom of Miscronia. Twishi was now certain that Morrow came from this kingdom. Miscronia's kingdom, unlike other countries, protects its heroes. Historical records show the royal family's ancestors and many aristocrats were heroes, so it is an ideal country for people like them. Everything became increasingly interesting. Tuyushi and Mal walked toward the ancient ruins. On the first day of their escape, the young people began training, while Tuishi taught them the ethics of fighting monsters. She fought a boar one-on-one for the first time. Tuishi observed that Mal had dodged the monster's attack well, but her counterattack was weak, possibly because she was afraid to harm a living creature. At last, she managed to bring down the boar as it roared and fell to the ground. Mal asked Tsuyoshi what he thought of her fight, and Tsuyoshi advised her to learn to handle the dagger better. As sunset approached, the young people began looking for a place to spend the night, and Marlux warned they could be attacked by predators because the site was so close to the forest. Before fleeing the city, Toei asked the guild for magic useful to the camp, a level 3 magic barrier, an increase in magic power, and a level 2 mana restoration. Toishai activated the magic shield. He planted his staff in the ground beside where they would sleep that night. They were now inside a magic circle that reliably protected them from all predators. Mal looked shocked, and the young man said, "The magic is solid, so she can touch the shield and they are safe inside. It will hold up against a troll attack." Tuishi suggested something to eat and pulled some food from the storage room. Steak, salted meat, vegetables and soup were served, and the fugitives ate hungrily. Preparing the spices, Mal enjoyed the cooking and her loved one's company. She said she was a taster. Wrapping meat in bread makes it twice as tasty, so young people fold it up and eat it for dinner. Eating in the fresh air made the food taste better, and Tuishi relaxed in Mal's company, forgetting his problems. He fought bitterly, convinced that no matter how it looked, they were now traitors to the state. After 3 days of hunting monsters, Toishi reached level 16 and Mal reached level 7, and they could now cut down goblins in no time. Mal mastered new sword techniques. The young man learned stealth and awareness. The princess improved her reconnaissance and survival skills, and Toishi gained a magic eye ability and level 3 poison resistance while saving skill points just in case. By the 3rd day, the young people reached the ancient ruins. The place resembled an ancient temple, beautiful, but with no signs of life anywhere. No one had settled here yet, perhaps because the temple grounds were a sanctuary and the ancient barrier was still active. The young people inspect the ruins closely. Skeletons were everywhere, all posed as if praying when they died, yet there was no sign of injury, which was odd. Tawishi called to this girl and showed her a ring he'd found in the ruins that seemed to increase magical power. The young man said there must be a lot of treasure here besides hunting monsters. Treasure hunting is an equally important source of income for adventurers. While searching the ruins, she found a few more useful items, then noticed Mal looked unwell and suggested the items might be cursed. They found a large pile of objects, a whole mountain of them. Mal shuddered and said she couldn't remove items from corpses, and Tuishi said the dead wouldn't need those items and that removing them was part of the funeral service. She chose an enhancement ring for him and suggested that Mal take something for magic. He wondered if he could put everything in a non-magical storage to sell later, but he had more interesting ideas. Tuishi picked out a beautiful ring and told the girl to put it on her finger. Later, they stood on the ancient ruins and prayed. Tuishi and Maro found a statue in the ancient ruins and assumed it was the god the ancient people worshipped, but the girl doubted it. It might have been a god once worshipped, but no longer honored, and an expert on ancient civilizations would know, but the young people did not. The light above the ruins suddenly dimmed, and Tuishi and Mal couldn't tell whether it was an illusion or something else. Ghostly figures reached toward them, held out their hands, and called for someone to be sent to them. One of the figures raised a dagger, stabbed him in the chest, and shouted for them to send a hero. Nobody could understand what was happening, as ghostly figures demanded a hero be sent and then killed themselves with their own weapons. She stared, bewildered, at one of the girls bleeding a step away from him. A boy hovered in the air and spoke to Tuishi as if he were a hero. The young man could not make out his own face. At last, the vision faded, and the young people breathed deeply. It was a very strange vision. Tuishi asked Mal whether all the heroes of the past had been summoned by similar rituals, and the girl said, "Heroes are simply talented people, born only rarely and cannot be taken or simply summoned. In this world, the strongest were heroes, people with mutations summoned from another world, and no one knew which hero those ghostly people had summoned." Toisy and Mal lay down on the ground, tired and with no clues. Tuisha wanted to know why people had built the temple and who the boy was, but a mystery cannot be solved without clues, so he might solve it if he treats it like a normal game. He could be summoned the same way as that hero. The day they first met, Tuishi was away from the crossroads and alone, with little money and few belongings, so he decided to become an adventurer. Touching Moral's shoulder, he admitted he was not from this world, saying he had lived in a different, peaceful place, without monsters or magic, and with no wars for 50 years, and he asked if she knew about it. Calmly, Mal replied that however unusual he was, she would always follow him. She stroked the young man's hand and said he was the dearest person to her. Each time she thought that if this moment could last forever, he would be the happiest person. He suddenly heard the sharp whistle of an arrow and saw it pierce Mars's chest. It happened so suddenly she screams in desperation. Gunfire continued from the ambush. She raised a windshield that blocked the enemy's arrows. These people wore black cloaks and masks. Ishi asked Mal not to die and to hold on. When the killers reached the place where their target had spent the night, it was empty, and it looked like Tuishi had run away with the girl. Tuishi held Marlin's arms and ran into the city to throw off his pursuers, but they somehow caught up to him quickly. The young man planned to heal the girl a little. Mal was too ill to open her eyes. She placed one near the stone column for each. Pulling the arrow from the wound, he realized it was poisoned and certain to be fatal. Mal seemed dead. Grief hit Aisha hard because Mal meant everything to him. She had suddenly appeared when he first came into the world. The same girl who ran away from home made him who he is now. This relaxed, free moral code was what he loved most in the world. He had never known how warm it felt to have someone who thought about you all the time. She could love and accept him as he was. No one like Mal exists in this world or any other. Maybe he came into this world only to meet her. He no longer wanted to live. Only a prayer to God remained, asking that Moral open her eyes. The killers closed in on Tuishi, convinced they had reached their target and that it was the end for him. Looking up at his killers, the young man realized they were the same freaks who had destroyed his morale. We watched her rush fearlessly at the enemy's superior forces, and they assumed the man had chosen to let them kill him peacefully and humanely. Only one thought filled the young man's inflamed mind: to avenge his moral sense. The mob of killers had already closed in. Laughing, the leader said it seemed this fool had decided to face him alone, and the fool had no chance. Even while trying to convince himself he didn't care, his head felt smothered by an immense darkness, and he just wanted to finish everyone off. They had killed his beloved Mal, and his rage could kill them all. The killers faced violence they had never heard of. The image of the dead Moral standing before his eyes increased his strength tenfold. Rain began to fall as Tuishi returned to the dead body of his beloved. A thunderstorm erupted, matching the fury that helped the young man destroy the entire squad of assassins. Only one killer remained, and Tuishi stepped forward to deal with him as well. Ishi pressed the tip of his sword to the masked girl's throat. The thought that those freaks had killed his dear Mal kept pounding in his head. The killer tried to run, but the magician used ice bullet magic and the villain fell. The magic froze her in place, leaving her unable to move. Tuisha lifted her and ripped the mask from her face. He asked the girl if they had come to kill him. In that case, they should have been ready to be killed themselves. After hearing the words about mercy, Tuai decided not to kill her if she told him the whole truth. Use magic to make the killer feel pain. He warned her that if she tried anything, he would kill her immediately. Now she must tell them everything. Speaking won't change anything. He will kill her anyway. The girl replied that the Kingdom of Calendale's assassination squad had been ordered to kill the hero. Tui Shimitsubo said they were originally chosen from the Order of Knights, trained and formed into a special forces unit. Once their training ended, they were named Cleaners. Tuishi realized that although they were a special forces unit, they were actually part of the kingdom's army and suspected the kingdom had ordered their elimination, while the mercenary said the squad set up to kill the hero had been organized by the nobility. Tuishi asked how they found their location so quickly, and the captive replied that the head of the knightly order had given them a hunting knife, and by following it, they came to these ruins. According to her, secret sealing techniques were used to make the knife. There is likely a special pattern on his sword's handle. This ruin lets you determine the location. Ishui was surprised at how easily the criminal revealed everything. Now, the woman served no purpose. Mal was dead, and this killer had to disappear, so the young man grabbed her throat with both hands. He now lived only for revenge, and nothing else mattered to him. Soft footsteps came from behind Tuishi, and he turned to see Mal approaching, looking bewildered. The young man lifted Mal into his arms and pressed her to his chest. Surprised she had survived, he heard the girl say she did not understand how it happened either. Pointing to the ring they had found in the ruins, she suggested she might have survived because the ring was enchanted. Toishi discovered through the magic eye that this divine ring could prevent death only once. Toishi's joy and happiness knew no bounds. Hugging the girl tenderly and kissing her, the young man thanked God for this miraculous salvation. Moral looked at the many corpses of the killers scattered across the ancient temple's ruins and realized Toishi had done it. He calmed the girl and told her everything was fine now because he would always protect her from everything. They hugged again, and Toishi reassured Mal that everything would be fine now. A squad of knights reached the temple ruins, and Waltz rushed to the hero and asked if he was all right. He found the criminals' dead bodies and a tied-up girl. Toishi gripped the sword and told the captain not to pretend to be an innocent lamb, saying the kingdom's order of knights had sent assassins after him. Waltz said, surprised, that he had no idea what Toishi meant. Grabbing the captive girl's hair, the hero said she had come for his head. A regular assassin of the Royal Order of Knights, she belonged to the Faramu forces. After eliminating the last 12 assassins, the surprised captain said that Tuishi had every right to be angry, but asked him to understand that the Kingdom of Calendale was not only trying to harm him, but also trying to protect him. Tuishi added with an ironic smile that if the assassination squad failed, Waltz would have to come and trick him into making peace, and that was what they had in mind. The captain admitted he had misunderstood, and Toishi continued, saying the country's knights were plotting the same evil plans as the assassins, like meeting at a crossroads and agreeing to travel together only to kill the partner in their sleep, leaving him unable to believe anything anymore and showing they were just toys in the hands of the kingdom of Calendale. He drew a magic circle in the air and said he would kill them all. Moral rushed to the young man and stopped him from doing it. She told Tuishi to calm down, knowing it was harder for him to trust the knights now. But making the kingdom of Calendale an enemy was unacceptable because he might try to trust Captain Waltz again. They are comrades who defeated the troll together. Tuichi accepted some of Mal's words and realized the captain was their comrade in arms, as Mal asked the captain if they could trust him. Walt braced a knee and pressed it against his own sword. After leaving the ruins, Tuishi and Mal went into the forest, scattered the magical items they had found by accident, and returned to the city. Tuichi asked about the surviving assassin's condition and was told her wounds had been healed with healing magic. Panicking, she pushed everyone away. That reaction was predictable. Even though she was a professional assassin, she failed her mission. Tuishi did not know who led the killers or what the head of the nobility was thinking. Amma's forces must of course be tried and given the appropriate punishment. Do we believe that the best solution would be to hand this killer over to them? Mal seemed somewhat sorry for the girl. Ethan called out joyfully to Tuishi after they had been apart for a long time. Confused, he looked at the young people and asked the hero what had happened. Ethan apologized sheepishly, figured he must have interrupted the date he had left with the woman, and said he hoped they could do a mission together again someday. Tuishi no longer lived ordinary days or took part in empty conversations. He could feel the current version of himself drifting further and further away from this. Relieved, the guild leader realized the young people were safe. He admitted he'd already begun to worry a little. Tuishi noticed the old man had lost some weight and wondered whether Oost working here meant he was connected to the kingdom of Calendale's minions and whether he was truly as worried as he claimed. Oost rewarded the young man for the materials he brought, which Tuishi had recovered from the ruins, and thanked him for his work. The old man asked what Toshi planned for the day, and the young man said he would rest all evening because he had to visit the Order of Knights tomorrow morning, after which Oost returned the adventure records to them. He announced that Toshi was now a D-rank adventurer and Mal an E-rank adventurer, and congratulated them. The old man asked what he planned to do as an adventurer, and the young man said he wanted to see how things would turn out for him. First, everything would depend on how this country showed itself in the future. Tuishi thought gloomily that without that ring, Mal would be dead, and he knew it wasn't something that could be easily taken or forgiven, so when Oost asked what he would do if he sensed something was wrong, the young man said he would simply flee the country, though it was unclear whether the nation would let him go so easily. After a moment's thought, he said he would launch a total war if this happened. Apenia was a little surprised the young people had returned after being apart for over a week and thought moral intuition had come to eat, but the young man said they had come to spend the night and only wanted to sleep. When the girl asked why they hadn't rented a house, Toisi said it wasn't true. Some events had just happened, and Hoipina happily offered them the same room they'd lived in before. Exhausted, the young people sank into bed, feeling blissful. She sadly remembered that just a week ago, everything had been quiet and peaceful. In this very room, they had been chatting about all sorts of nonsense and playing pranks. If she had focused on earning money or on training and had thought about morals, things could have turned out differently. Looking at his hands, he thought that with these very hands, he had killed 12 people, but they still tried to do the same to him. They wanted to take away someone dear to him, and he would naturally want revenge. This is his freedom and his right. As he lay in bed with his eyes closed, Tuishi convinced himself he was not a bad person. Once he arrived in another world, he felt he could live freely without rules, so he decided to get used to it. All his actions led to this because he was hailed as a hero. The country came after him. Assassins targeted him, and because Moral ran away with him, she had to risk her life. Sadly, he thought that if he hadn't taken the task at the start and hadn't defeated the troll, then everything would have been different. This only happened because he believed he was the main character in a fantasy world. So what caused it? Twisha felt regret. On waking, Mal asked the boy why he was sitting in the dark. She was likely still troubled by Twishi killing those people. Although she understood he did it for her, she didn't want that. And if she'd known it could happen, she would have made a different decision. Had Mal not chosen Tuishi, things might have gone better. Mal would not have had to flee the city. Twishi woke with a scream, having dreamed that Mal had died. Seeing the girl, he realized it was only a dream. Mal asked if he was okay. Mal said she had just woken up and went to the kitchen for some water. Did he want her to sit on the edge of the bed in a foul mood and ask the girl if she was disappointed in him? Mal sat down beside him and asked why he had brought it up, and the hero said he had killed people with his own hands because he thought she was dead, killing as many as 12 people. Even murderers probably have families, siblings, and loved ones, and yet he killed them. He ended their lives in a way that can never be undone. Mal hugged the young man gently and said he had done it for her sake to protect her, and that if she were in his place, she would probably think the same, so there was no point in blaming herself. She alone is to blame for this, and Twishi said it was stupid. He said it wasn't true. She didn't dare to say it, and the girl said she was very scared. At that moment, Toishi gave in to his feelings and began destroying everything in his path. But giving in to emotion is not a way out. He understood this, but most likely lost consciousness and would hardly wake until he had destroyed something. The young people hugged tightly, pressing close against one another. Moral stroked Tuishish's head with her hand and said soothingly that she would always be by his side. Tuishi confessed to Mal that he had completely lost his mind, sat in front of her crying, and she comforted and forgave him no matter what, even though she had lived only half as long as he had, and his former self would have found it unthinkable. The young man asked Mal to forgive him. Looking back to the very beginning, the girl said it would be clear their problems were rooted in her, but Tui interrupted, saying he was glad she was alive and felt terribly guilty, because the whole situation had happened due to his actions, yet she still forgave him. Moral slapped Ishi on the forehead and looked at him encouragingly. She said her twitchy son is not a crybaby or a weakling. She sees him as a hero she admires deeply. If he does not realize that himself, he is in big trouble. Suddenly understanding everything about Mal, who truly is herself, she supports his heart so deeply and firmly that he will be grateful to her for the rest of his life. Mal said he's not from this world, and people say he may be the supposed hero, and she's very glad Tui told her about him, but before, when she tried to learn more, he always acted coldly. Tuishi could hardly believe he had once been cold to this girl. She asked Tuishi whether he wanted to know more about her, like her real name, or that she's actually a princess, while dumping her problems on him, lying to him, and dragging him into all kinds of trouble. Tuishi wanted to learn more about her. He also wants to know everything about the person he cares about most. Marl revealed her real name is Mali Vran Miscronia, and that she is the first princess of the kingdom of Miscronia and second in line to the throne. Forced into marriage with a prince from the neighboring kingdom of Gebra, she slipped into a secret passage in the royal treasury to escape, and while fleeing, accidentally broke the oracle ball that reveals the future. God himself gave this item to people. It is also called the authentic oracle ball artifact. Despite being magical, no one knew how to use the oracle ball. It lay forgotten in the treasury, and no one realized it had to be broken to work. To asked with interest what happened next. Mal said she heard a voice in her head. Who did she believe was the voice of God, and what did she ask the girl the voice had told her? The princess said the voice had told her that at the crossroads in Calendale, an adventurers' guild would form. A black-haired man named Twishi would appear there, and she must tempt him. At first, she did not trust the voice, but she had no choice, and it had helped her many times, so she finally reached the crossroads. Then, at first sight, she fell in love with Tuishi-san. Did the young people throw themselves onto the bed? Tuishi told the girl she was a genuine demoness, and that was an understatement. Mal said if he kept praising her like that, she would get even hotter. Seeing him whine in front of her, she expected him to be completely submissive, and he is really cute now. Their passion had run out. Each time she woke up in the morning when it was already light. A little annoyed, he realized he had blurted everything to Marlon Vane, but he had regained his composure and still had one thing to check. He summoned the voice of God, which told the young man it believed Toishi had already forgotten him. The hero asked the voice directly if he had told Mal to meet him and fall in love with him. The voice said it had been her preference. The voice also reminded the young man that he had treated such a beauty well. Toishi tuned out, found the voice awful, and could not bear that some shady person had connected them with Moral. The suspicious person was baffled that Toishi had switched off so strangely. There was nothing unexpected about him, but he was interesting to watch, and it would be good if he came here sooner. The day was magnificent, sunny, and warm. The knights of the crossroads faced many pressing matters. At breakfast, Mal asked Toishi what he planned to do today. The young man said they had no choice but to go as planned and that guards would accompany them, so any attempt to escape would be useless. They hurriedly got ready and headed for the exit, ignoring Hoi Pienius's calls to rest a little longer. Twishi told her that he and Mal were going to the imperial capital. They thanked Hoi Pina for giving them shelter. The hostess wished them a safe journey. Cards moved along a road that wound at the foot of the mountains. Inside one of them were Mal and Tuishi, along with Captain Waltz and his squad of royal knights. The young man, recalling Mal's confession and the events, believed he alone had killed those 12 people and that nothing could change that, and he knew he would never forget this sin. Maro may be able to forgive him. Trying to make it up to Firmu could backfire because it may come off as asking for forgiveness, and she may not want that. Mal turned to Twishi, who flinched at the sudden movement. The girl asked him not to frown because his face looked frightening. In the kingdom of Calendale, not everyone is bad, but a major crime stirred unrest in the royal army and left a strong sense of tension. Mal handed Tuishi an envelope and said the letter came from Commander Twining, reporting on the progress of the investigation into the events in those ruins and noting a detachment led by Captain Waltz had been sent there. Once the report of the troll's kill was sent, army higher-ups ordered a tracking seal placed on the item that would be awarded as a Medal of Honor, which looked very suspicious, but the status check confirmed Toishi was a hero. Higher commanders ordered everyone not to approach the hero and to wait for further instructions. It seemed strange, so they launched an immediate investigation that showed an illegal squad called the Cleaners was targeting the hero. Rushing to take protective measures, he learned immediately that they had escaped from the crossroads, and using the seal the first detachment was sent to help. He realized too late that by the time the hero assassination squad got the report of the troll's death, they had probably already started planning his murder. Judging only by the letters to Naive, the decision appears to have been made by the army itself. The troll's elimination was reported on the 1st, and the attack on them took place on the 6th. They spent the first day partying, eating and drinking until they fell asleep, and the report on the troll's elimination was probably compiled then. While on the 2nd day, Tuishi spent the whole day on a date, and if Twining had not begun preparing a hunting knife that day, he would not have made it in time. On the third day, they visited the knightly order, which confirmed his status and declared him a hero, and they spent the day preparing gear for the journey. On the fourth day, they left the crossroads at dawn, and after 3 days, they reached the ruins. On the sixth day, before half a day had passed, they were attacked. Even so, it happened too quickly. Their moves were too fast. They need to piece all this information together. As Marl said, if you don't connect all the information beforehand, you might still be able to figure out the next time they decide to backstab, and for starters, it would be nice to get through this without any accidents. The carriage suddenly stopped, and they were told they would take a break here. It was still far from the royal capital. When the halt was called, Tuishi finally had a free minute. It had been a long time since he checked his status and abilities, and since he could hardly predict when they would be attacked next or how much poison they'd face, the best solution was to raise his poison resistance and his senses of presence and danger to the maximum 3rd level. After finishing, Tuishi decided to test the sense of presence first. In the center, he senses how many people are here and how strong they are, and at last he can use this ability. When someone's name matches their appearance, they can tell whose presence it is. That's a very convenient ability. If he gains stealth, he can avoid people who sense his presence or danger. She also wanted to increase his production capabilities. He had a great idea that if the kingdom apologized, he would ask for a mansion to use as his personal workshop. About 170,000 people live in Alfan's capital, and including adventurers and wandering merchants in the slums brings the total to 200,000. The capital was surrounded by 4 fortress walls, and their carriage stood at the 4th, which was still being rebuilt. A long row of shops and inns lined the area, so it was always bustling, and even included a slave market. Deeper inside is the commoner's quarter, which, unlike the wall's edge, has better shops, inns, and artisan workshops. Inside the 3rd wall, a row of even finer shops and inns contains government offices, churches, a school of magic, luxury houses and shops, and soldiers serving the castle and knights. Inside the 2nd wall lie the noble quarters, where richly dressed residents show off while guards keep the peace. Adventurers usually have no business here, so you will not meet them. I wish you had to see the capital for the first time. The royal castle stood huge and majestic, towering over the other buildings. Captain Waltz said goodbye to the young men, told them their escort ended here, and warned them to be careful. Waltz shook the young man's hand and asked him to look after Mrs. Marl. After saying that, Captain Waltz left with the first attachment. He spoke to them kindly until the end, apparently showing his concern for them. At the palace, a girl met them and promised to grant any wish they might have. The palace's interior beauty and splendor amazed the young people. She told us she had decided that going before the audience armed was not a good idea, but when she turned to Moral, he said she did not need to worry about her mithril short sword. The girl agreed with him because the red cloth tied to her sword only showed affection for her partner, so carrying it in front of the royal family would not be rude. Tuisha called his maid over and asked her to take his weapon for safekeeping. The reception room door opened, and the young people were invited in for an audience. Tuishi tried to calm Marl, but she reminded him she was a princess. Princess Malia Varan of the Kingdom of Micronia. Tuisha said sorry and stepped forward. They stepped into the room where their audience would be held. Tuishi and Marl stood ready to receive in the palace throne room. A group of young people approached the throne where Kurandal 41, the ruler of the Kingdom of Kalendal, sat. The emperor ordered the young men to rise from their knees, and Tuishi respectfully introduced himself while the ruler asked for his companion's name. Marl said she was Mr. Tuishi's guide, reminded Corandal they had met 3 years earlier, and thanked him for the repeated invitation. The emperor furrowed his brow in concern and studied Marl closely. However, Even the emperor could not refuse someone from another royal family this time, because she was the kingdom's second princess. Corendel ordered everyone out of the hall except Zontac, and the emperor recognized her as Malia Vran, Miss Cronia. Mal said they had a proposal and asked the emperor to act as if nothing had happened. Mr. Toy came to the palace to be recognized as an adventurer, and there was no other reason for his coming, and there never was. The fact that Toishi was attacked by hired killers must be hidden, and the attack on Miss Cronia's first princess must be hidden too, because thanks to the adventurers, they do not have a single scratch. And the ruler asked what they want to achieve with this. Mal said that to prevent a similar mistake, they had to do everything thoroughly and keep it secret. And Carendel agreed, but expressed doubts about their location. Mal told the emperor that if they had to return to their country, she would have to tell him every detail. Public news that the princesses of another kingdom had been attacked could spark a war, and Mal asked that no one find out about the planned attack and that Miss Cronia not learn of her presence. These were two conditions. It was essential to prevent disputes between neighboring countries. For the kingdom of Calendale, this was not a difficult request. The emperor nodded and agreed to do everything she asked. After thanking the emperor, Mal said she had one more request about Lord Tuishi. Tuishi decided to speak for himself and make the request. Since it benefits them, he needs to win their favor. The hero turned to Calendal and asked for permission to use Alphen as a stronghold. The capital of Alphen has well-developed infrastructure, and locals always greet you with a smile. Working in a place like that would be wonderful for him. As the emperor hesitated, Tuishi realized this place could be dangerous because of the many attacks, but it was also where he could earn the king's favor. Toishi said that as an adventurer, he wants to serve here of his own free will, and although money and fame appeal to him, he does not want to use power for evil. To protect the kingdom of Calendale, he wants to become a hero and is ready to defend the country from attack. The emperor, devoting all his power to good, said he understood and ordered Zontac to handle every issue, and the young man promised that if things became too difficult, he would simply leave the country. Zantek von Meister said he belonged to His Majesty's inner circle and deserved to be remembered. The young people also introduced themselves and said they were happy to meet one another. Zontac urged him to speak plainly and said not to worry about his wording, since he was tired of keeping an official tone. He said the Scouts Guild told them about the hero's situation, but before they could act, everything changed, and the nobles close to the army fled. Zontac admitted they had acted unforgivably toward the heroes in Princess Molia. Deeply grateful to the heroes, he knew it would have been terrible if Princess Malay, his country's greatest treasure, had been killed in secret, and he was surprised to see Zontac, despite his rank, bow his head to the young people. He got down to business and said that for their country, once heroes appeared, information about them had to belong to the League's member countries. That had been announced long ago, but not all heroes liked it, so he asked what they thought about making their exploits public. Stating his wish, he said firmly that he did not want anyone to talk about him. Marl agreed with Tuishi, and Zontac then suggested a different direction. Yes, the hero. What were they counting on next, and what did they really want? Tui replied that he wanted a normal-sized bath for himself and a workspace for forging weapons and doing alchemy, while Marl wanted a large bed and a comfortable sofa, and since she expected many guests after their adventures, she wanted a reliable butler and maid. Zontac promised to try to do everything according to their wishes, but he admitted there might be some difficulties. By asking the young men to stay at the castle so he can tend the garden, he also plans to reduce the influence of nobles who support hardline military policies. They decided to stay in the castle and watch the city below from the high towers with interest. A decision was made for Toshi and Mal to stay in Alphine's capital. Marl fixed Toyoshi's eye with a mysterious smile and said she wanted something. Tuishi and Marl had been in the palace for 10 days and had nothing to do. Marl thought that if this continued, they would remain here as hostages for the rest of their lives, and at that moment, someone approached them. She said the base preparations were complete. The young people went to look at their new house. Marl was thrilled and said their new base looked like a real mansion. It had an exit to the main road. The place was quiet and covered in greenery, and Tuishi noticed the house was larger than he had imagined. Cleaning such a large house would be difficult, but Marl reassured him that Zontak would delegate the job to the manager or the maids. Inside, Jack Mason met them and explained that His Excellency Zontak had put him in charge of the house. The young people then gave their names, and the manager offered to show them the estate. They all entered the large hall, then went into the kitchen and looked into the dining room. Behind the house were a living room and a foraging and alchemy workshop. Relieved, Toishi was very happy that in addition to the forge and bathhouse, there was a fireplace and a toilet, both lit by magic, though it obviously cost a lot. In front of everyone, she admitted to Jack that he was impressed, saying it was really cozy here, and the manager replied that it was unnecessary to say such things to the servants. The hero thought a polite elderly man like Jack would not be used to being addressed informally, and since he was paid by the Kingdom of Calendale, it could not be said they had hired him. Tuishi pulled out a heavy bag of gold and handed it to Jack, explaining the estate had just started to be used and they needed to buy many things. They also needed money for daily expenses, and Jack could use it for food and other costs. Tuishi did not want to owe the Kingdom of Calendale, since it also paid for this house's upkeep. Marl asked Mr. Jack where the maid was, and the manager said his niece was the maid, but she was out shopping. Tuishi had completely forgotten this common charm of estates. Mr. Jack's niece was as polite as he was, and just then Mabel returned to apologize to her uncle for being late. Apologizing for the inconvenience, she then introduced herself and gave her name. Marl asked her to look after them, assuring Tuishi and Marl she would be happy to work with them. The maid became so excited she dropped the groceries she had bought on the floor. Apologizing, Mabel left to handle urgent work. Jack asked the young people to forgive his niece and said that her strange character explained her behavior. Marl liked the girl and found Mabel kind and friendly. Mabel told Jack that if he planned to make the first move, he should consult her because she shouldn't have to explain how to behave properly with a woman. The manager said she was talking about which kinds of heroes she prefers. Mabel asked Tuishi what he wanted for dinner and said she would be happy to grant any wishes. The boy said he actually wanted something, but he'd prefer Marl choose the menu. The girl said she was having a hard time choosing because they'd been eating so much fancy food at the royal palace lately. Now, she wanted simple fish and rice, and the maid replied happily that everything would be done. She lifted his hand, with the palm facing the girl's, and opened his eyes wide. He asked Mabel if there was any rice here, and she said you could find some by searching a little in the markets of Alphen, and Tuishi said he was very hungry. All he wanted was the race. A fierce hunger hit the hero, and after one serving, he immediately asked for more. Tuishi could not believe that after arriving in this world, about a month ago, he had only just learned there was rice here. He dreamed about it so often he couldn't get enough. Marl eyed the young man suspiciously and asked if he really loved rice that much. Tuishi, in turn, wondered if this was truly a traditional product of the kingdom of Miscaronia. He needs to visit this kingdom because they have rice, and he still knows nothing about this world. He wondered if this tasted like his hometown. The hero confirmed the guess and kept eating the rice heartily, and the princess did the same. As a result, their relationship with morality improved. Both the bathhouse and the new mansion were lavish. Marl could hardly believe she could now bathe in such a spacious tub. It all felt like a dream. Relaxing in the pool, The young people felt like they were in paradise, and Tuishi liked this world more and more. Mal asked the young man to describe his hometown. He wanted to tell her about it, but telling her about that world's technology might alter this world's future. So he said his city was peaceful and had no demons or wars. Life there was hard, and earning money where he lived was difficult. A person could only meet all their needs if they had money. Marl thought it all sounded like a dream. Toichi Grand said this was a country where about 30,000 people a year died by suicide because of hardships, where people lived like cogs in a society that was far from ideal, and it was not a good place. Marl asked what they would do tomorrow, and Tuichi said they first had to go to the Adventurers Guild in Alfing. The weapons were still usable, but he wanted to buy new armor. The princess asked where he was headed in such a hurry. The young man suggested they go to the market in the new city to look for good deals, and Marl liked the idea, saying she wanted to eat at a restaurant that served rice and casually asking the hero if he wanted to have sex. Toishi had no problem with rice or sex. Climbing out of the pool, the girl believed she had won this time. She then asked Marl where she learned such an art of seduction, and the girl admitted she had simply asked others about it. When the maid from the royal castle showed her almost everything, Tuishi was stunned by Marl's curiosity and knew the night would never end. Going to the library with Marl the next day made sense, since it was the best place to find information, and he still did not know much about Eliad. The library had so many books and was a real treasure. These books were all written by hand, so there are probably no typewriters here yet. Tuishi asked the princess to show him around briefly, and she agreed. According to her, several civilizations once existed in LER. It is now the 3rd of December, and 2,203 years have passed since the gods created this world. Religion here unites all people and guides them forward, and sometimes gods descend to earth to perform miracles and give people magical gifts. Tuisha asked whether the man who gave moral treasure was also a god, and the girl, realizing Tuisha meant the pearl, said yes. The books say the pearl was given to her by the Savior, the goddess who created this world 2,203 years ago, and she trusted Marl. The hero asked what had happened to the goddess, and the girl said the goddess had fallen into an eternal sleep, leaving her body to the world to bear a new heir. As Tuishi learned more, it became clear that the goddess speaking to him, who was moral, was one of the oldest. Tell me why he was summoned to another world and what happened. Tuichi realized he needed to think more clearly. His thinking had been poor. All he wanted was to live peacefully in another world. Marl asked the hero if he was okay and if he was tired of listening to her. Knowing the young man was still willing to listen, she suggested reading about the continent. Marl said the south is cold and the north is warm, and the continent that holds the kingdom of Calendale and her hometown, Cronia, is called Pit, which means the first continent. Next, the princess displayed Toisha Pete's political map. A drawing showed the kingdom of Calendale, now one of the oldest states on the plain. Farming produces enough food for trade, agriculture is the main industry, and the standard of living is good. Salt must be imported because the sea is far away, and there is no rock salt. Because Mamula controls so much forest, the timber industry is underdeveloped. Marl pointed to the kingdom of Micronia, her home kingdom, which spans the eastern and southeastern parts of the continent. Many lakes, rivers, and seas provide abundant water resources and seafood. Cronia is called the land of travelers because it connects many ports around the world, and people say everything can be found there. There is a lot of water there, but it has both advantages and disadvantages. She said again that Cronia supplies sea salt to Calendale. She is not sure whether Miss Cronia can outperform Calendale. Giefels is in Eastern Pit, a mountain kingdom with elven villages near the forests. Marl sighed and said this was basically how things were on the continent right now, then asked what Toishi liked best. The young man paused, then replied that he liked Miss Cronia's kingdom most. Mal was clearly pleased to hear this. Toishi assured the princess he was being honest and fair about this. Mal asked him suspiciously whether he said that because you can eat as much rice as you want there. She hoped they could someday walk around Miss Cronia. Then she asked the girl if she would have to marry, and the girl said it would not happen because she would not return to her homeland. Marl suggested Toichi take a short walk around the market. There was extraordinary activity with merchants selling meat, flour, and many other goods, including salt, that had just been brought from Miss Cronia. Tomorrow, I'll spend a long time comparing prices and haggling at the counters. The shoppers left this market feeling very satisfied, and the young people bought many items, including clothes for tomorrow. Tui noted that the new quarters seemed to have everything anyone could want, and he suggested going to the market outside the castle. People thought the selection here was even bigger. The young people found a store that interested them. It wasn't a store after all. It was a brothel. Realizing this, Morale suggested she leave immediately because there was no need for him to watch. Angrily, the girl asked if he really liked girls like that, and the young man replied he was only interested in what they were selling there. Prostitution and the slave trade are part of the natural order of the world. A merchant came to Aisha and said his slaves were healthy, obedient, and even had combat skills. The young man saw one of the slaves and was surprised to realize the slave could be bought and sold like property. He felt pity for the girls, still very young but already slaves. Overwhelming pity filled Toichi. Arriving in this world, he saw people who looked like slaves. They never looked up. Toichi saw a girl being dragged by two huge men, and the girl resisted, vowing to kill them if they tried to sell her. Thrown to the ground, the girl lay frozen and limp, while the young people could not understand what had happened. Something that looked like magic could immobilize a slave. The slave trader lifted the girl with one hand and said they would lower the price, insisting that while she was their property, they could do as they pleased, and then the men left with her. Toichi still had much to learn about this world, but he felt he understood its laws, and the slaves here were like objects. This was the harsh reality of his new world. Moral saw Toishi's altered expression and suggested he leave if he felt that bad. Toichi knew it was unsurprising that things like this happened in this world, and he had to accept it since he chose to live here. Even if this happens, people take it for granted. The young man asked Mal if their work surprised her. Mal stared at the hero in bewilderment and said she could only guess what his world was like. She had no concern for any of this. To her, they were only slaves. Many are adventurers who fell into debt, merchant daughters who were sold, or children from poor families, and some are criminals too. And once someone becomes a slave, nothing can be done, so she no longer wants to think about it. Hugging Toichi, she tried to guess his interstate. Marl suggested he go home, and the hero agreed. Marl stopped abruptly and glanced to the side. A strange girl stood there. Leaning against the wall, she wore a for sale sign around her neck, chained up. Her face brought to mind someone like Toichi. The figure of the killer served as a moving force. Toichi and Marl could not take their eyes off the girl among a line of similar slaves. Noticing Toishi's gaze, the slave trader told him he had excellent taste and that the girl had just been delivered to him. A mid-level adventurer trained in martial arts will obey him unconditionally if he uses subjugation magic. If he hasn't heard of subjugation magic, he can explain it all. The magic of submission creates a bond that links slaves to the master and makes them obey any of his orders. If they disobey, they break the contract, and the slave will suffer severe pain and could die. Toei realized this was the same magic he had seen at the market and asked the merchant how much the girl cost. He said it wasn't worth at least 20 gold coins. Aishi asked the merchant to wait and took the contract to read. Visibly surprised, Marl asked Quixie why that girl in particular, but even if the hero had asked himself, he would not have found an answer. Tuishi wondered if he could protect the girl if he bought her. After blood stained the contract, the deal was sealed. After accepting the money, the merchant said the contract he had read required the owners to provide the slave with food, shelter, and clothing, and to bring him to the market to be bought by the merchant if they no longer needed him. The merchant shoved Frama toward Twashi and said this man was now her new owner. She recognized him, and the hero asked her to come along. His hand reached out to help her up, but she remembered how it had once strangled her. The hero asked why she was chosen for the move. If given the chance, she would kill him without hesitation. Lunging at her new master, she forced Toishi to use magic. For a moment, she dropped her hands helplessly and said she was defeated, that she had ended up here, and that he was now her master. He wished he had pulled a warm blanket from his storage and thrown it over the girl. Harama was very surprised by the simple action. Seeing the girl had regained consciousness, Tuishi invited her to come with him again, though he knew Fridamu would not listen now. Then the merchant approached the girl and told her he had forgotten something. Most people assume slaves will obey any order, especially if they used to be criminals. I can't help rewrite content that promotes non-consensual sexual activity. Without complaint, Farama replied that she would do everything in her power. Mabel was surprised the young people did not come back alone. It surprised her even more to learn she had been sold as a slave at the market. Toishi told the maid that Furamu was their guest. Mabel replied she would prepare the bedroom and the food and let her take a bath while she handled everything in return. Toishi realized with regret he could not help her because it would be indecent. He feared the girl would be left alone. Toichi was surprised that Firmu had survived so many burns, bruises, and cuts. Without warning, the girl dropped to her knees and grabbed Toishi's clothes. He reminded her she was a guest here, not a slave. Marl helped Forum and told her to relax. Marl insisted on going into the bathroom with her and on keeping boys out. Left alone, Toishi figured the subjugation magic was unlikely to harm the girl, and then Mabel said the guest room and food were ready. If he can do anything else to help her, he should say so. Toishi simply apologized to the maid. Meanwhile, the girls were getting water treatments in the bathroom, and Marl soaked for ammo once again. For a moment, she admitted she did not understand what Toshi was thinking. Marl soaked the girls' backs and said she didn't know either. She still knows very little about Toishi-san. His words always shift her point of view and her overall worldview. Amu admitted she was a murderer, but now everything is different. Marl said she felt Tuishi's world was far removed from murder and cruelty, but Faramo replied angrily that no such world existed. She could not live in a world where even children who cannot help it must do something for their country. What does Marl want to do for herself? The girl replied that Twishisan does everything possible for her, yet she wondered if anyone loved her. The cruel world simply spoiled her. If something worries her, she can safely confide in her. When Mu asked Envy, is this really her house? Marol replied that this house truly belonged to her and admitted she loved for Amazon. The slave and former murderer understood everything. Marl asked Tuishi why she didn't stop worrying about everything to do with the killers. The unman admitted he no longer felt guilty, but it would not be easy for him because he had driven Amu mad and made her unhappy. Blushing, Morale said he was strong but still human and could not please everyone. For a moment, she thought this man was trying to help her. After 3 days, Mabel still couldn't reach the mezzanine to get the box. Furamu pulled it out easily and handed it to the maid. Surprised, Mabel looked at the girl and said she was their new guest, and Furumu replied the girl was a slave. The maid left before the end. She apologized and said she had to go. Fromu found it hard to be both a slave and a guest. Not sure she could live with them here any longer, she had been looking for a home for a long time. The third child born into a family of knights. Suramu aspired to be a great knight like her father. She was told that a girl cannot become a knight. He urged her to follow her sister's example and behave properly, but Faramu still felt like an outsider. Her only wish was to find her place and become a knight so her father would be proud. One day, her efforts paid off, and because she already knew the rules of combat, she was given a task, and with great difficulty joined the royal army through irregular conscription. There she found comrades and a place, or so she thought, until a certain day. Every comrade was dead, and she was the only survivor. The trial took place in her home country. They exiled and disgraced her father. Every dream she had was gone. Marl gave a vague chuckle and looked at Tuishi. Marl warned him not to interfere in the assassin's affairs. He suffered greatly because of them. Just then, Faramu entered the room, and everything became clear to her. She apologized that everything had turned out this way. Marl said Tuishi only wanted to be a hero. Marl hugged the girl and told her Faramu was a victim too. Acting out of duty, she did it, and they ended up hurting each other. Marl rose from the table with determination. She suggested doing it the way she thought best. If no one else will forgive them, she will. Tuishi couldn't figure out what she wanted to do, and Marl announced that she was a princess. Tuishi asked Marl what she could say about Faramu and what she had done that could not be forgiven. A moose said that although Marl's words sounded meaningless, they were actually a reasonable approach. Joining the unit, she was ready for anything, while the others were taught only to fight. She lost all her knowledge and passed it on, and she was badly wounded on a mission. Tuishi helped her when she was sold into slavery, but he must decide whether to forgive her for disliking being a slave because of how people treated her. This explains why her life is vicious, and her comrades would be shocked if they saw her like this. She cannot be forgiven for her comrade's death, and even though they killed others, they remained friends. She cannot forgive herself, which is why she pushed herself so deep into this problem. Furamu asked Marl to stop being a slave, but Marl said that was impossible because it was a punishment for criminals. Furamu could not understand why this strange man was helping a slave who had once been his enemy. And maybe it was because, in that world, killing was seen as utterly wrong. Wanting to make amends, he turned to the slave and asked whether they had done something wrong and how they could help her, then looked at the girl and asked her to forgive him for ruining her life and future. The hero vowed to atone for his sin. He asked Ferrum to move in with them. The slave was taken aback by the proposal. The next morning, Tuishi was annoyed to find he was already late. He thought about everything for so long that in the end, he couldn't get enough sleep. He was shocked to see Frama in her new clothes, as Marl and Mabel had made her into a true lady. Marl explained that Furamuth thought she was a slave, not a guest, so they decided she would be a servant from that day on. Jack added that Mabel couldn't handle a heavy workload and thought that was a good idea. Amu thanked everyone for understanding her and offered to help in the future. She longed to be loved too. Tuishi grew wary when she heard those words, unsure what the speaker meant. Furmo quickly said she was joking, but the young man found it believable coming from her. Discovering that this girl had joined their company, despite being a former killer, felt strange. A man called out to Tuishi at the market. A messenger from Calendale Castle arrived with a special mission for the hero. Before Tuishi could make sense of it, the castle staff tied him up and dragged him away. At the castle, the maid told the mistress her order had been carried out and everything was ready. Entering the room where Tuishi was tied up on the floor, she turned to him and offered to be her boyfriend. Lying on the floor in an uncomfortable position, the hero could not understand what was happening. The princess stepped toward Tuishi and said confidently that he would belong to her and that it would be a great honor for him. The hero decided it was another prank by Princess Calanella, who ruled the kingdom of Calendale. She told her it would be improper for him to stay if she had no business with him. So he intended to leave immediately because a man should not be in an unmarried girl's room. Raising her eyebrows, the princess offered the hero at least a cup of tea and a short chat. But despite the friendly hint, everything looked different. She did not understand what Princess Colonella planned to do with the toys. When he asked why he should belong to her, the princess said Tuishi was the bravest man in 50 years, and that together they could make the kingdom the most prosperous in the world. The princess said it had always been that way, and the young man asked her to be more specific. It seems unlikely she wants them to become close right after meeting, especially since their first encounter was far from ideal, and the girl said she knew a lot about Toishi. The young man caught her eye when her father spoke with him. He had been staying in the castle for 10 days. Toishi could not understand why he had never seen the princess here. Toishi said he was not interested in any of it. He had helped her father for money and honor, not for power. Besides, he already had good morale when the maid entered the room with tea. The princess invited the hero to help himself, because only certain aristocrats and members of the royal family could afford this tea, and Toishi sipped it and said its aroma was truly unique. I want to know which kingdom this tea came from. It was a top-tier royal sleeping pill. The young man slowly poured the cup's contents onto the floor and asked the girl why she needed it. His original skill proved the sleeping pill could put anyone to sleep, and the princess chose to use Taishi, though she was unaware of his past and indifferent to the young man's courage. Apologizing to the hero, the maid explained she had simply mixed up the herbs. Toishi was not surprised. The princess makes her own laws and sends people to their deaths. Unfortunately, evil had occurred in the kingdom, and it should not have. The incident left no mark on the princess's face. It amused her and made her want the hero even more. She turned to Stella, the maid. Princess Naniera instructed her to activate the pendant. Tuishi instantly knew this instrument was magical. Naniera embraced the maid and praised her. The princess turned to the hero and asked what it felt like to have the ancient's magic on him. And the young man realized it was a hypnotic pendant that left him completely immobilized. Naniera said reproachfully that if he had agreed to be hers right away, this would not have happened, but now nothing could be done. Meeting the hero's gaze, she offered him friendship. Grinning impudently, the princess said she would do anything to get what she wanted. She drank some liquid from the bottle Stella gave her and leaned over Wishy, who lay motionless. The hero asked the princess what she had drunk, and the girl replied, it was not poison, but an aphrodisiac, a potion that would keep even a virgin from feeling pain. Annoyed, he thought that even his poison resistance skill was useless here. Naniera was already feeling the drink's effects and began to unfasten the hero's belt. Burning with desire, the princess kept pressing for sex. Both girls act on him with curiosity and passion. His physical condition surprised them slightly. Stella asked her mistress to avoid showing weakness. Naniera commanded Stella to go first. LeMay obeyed the princess's command. Toishi still couldn't control his body, and if he did nothing, both the princess and the maid would pester him. The maid started to pull down the hero's pants, but he fought free and ran away. Naniera was so disappointed, she shook with anger, thinking how this man could run away halfway and whether he would later regret it as a man. Tuishi wondered who he should give his virginity to, then told the Princess Mal about it and called her stupid. Just then, the door swung open and everyone saw Moral, who asked the young man if he was all right. All she learned came from the messenger. Naniera recognized the girl as Princess Malay Misgrinia. She always gets the best of everything and won't let Mal get close to the hero. The girl said she only wants people around, does what she wants, and that's why others call her selfish. Nania demanded they stop blaming her, since Marl had rejected the kingdom's alliance and been offended by a letter from her sister. But Marl replied that she would not listen and said she knew nothing about any sister named Tanavi. Toishi grabbed his head in frustration, realizing they were really going to take his virginity over this and that the princesses were genuinely close friends. Meanwhile, the situation escalated into an assault, and the hero asked whether they were truly childhood friends. Marl looked surprised and asked the hero why he thought they'd been friends since childhood. Toishi sighed with relief and realized they were simply getting along well. At that moment, the king entered the room with his guards and asked what had happened here. The king couldn't figure out what was happening in his palace. After settling the matter, the king apologized to the hero and accepted full blame, since he had failed to keep an eye on it. Tui calmed the emperor and told him not to be so afraid, but the king had already tried to kill him many times and was not even from Carindil, and 41st replied it was not only that, and he only wanted to apologize for what happened. The king guessed that he probably no longer wanted to help their kingdom, and the young man was astonished by such treachery. Seeing this as a convenient pretext for repeated attempts on his life, Marl turned to His Majesty and said she had something to discuss. Officials soon announced that Princess Nanira and the girl with her were placed under arrest for 2 months. Stella poisoned Mr. Tuishi, so she faces the death penalty. The hero thought the decision was unfair, since the princess was to blame. Yet the maid faced execution and had no choice but to obey her mistress. Tuishui was told the royal family never makes mistakes, so if they did, the maid failed to protect the princess, which was her duty, and the maid will be executed and the princess arrested. Mao told Tuishi not to worry, and the young man asked angrily, "Is this normal?" Mao calmed the hero down. Zontak said that because the hero was worried, they would not abolish the death penalty or hide the evidence. But if he wanted, they could make the girl a slave and hand her over to him. Mal thanked Zontak for his generosity. He doubted that either the princess or the maid would agree to those conditions. She almost thought imprisoning her was too harsh, so she turned to the hero and blamed him for not becoming her friend, saying if he had everything would have fine. But now, because of him, they were going to execute Stella. Zontak approached the princess and said he would take her to the monastery, and at the end, Nanira, turning to Moral, said she would not stop until she had taken everything from her. Mao told the king they should end the talks for the day. She was tired and planned to return home with Tuishi. Stepping outside, Mao realized she kept having problems with this girl. She was glad that Toishi belonged only to her, and the hero felt grateful the next day. Mabe and Furumu lit up when their owners returned. Furumu rushed to the boy and asked if he was hurt, because her heart nearly stopped when she heard the news. Worry kept her tense all the time. Moral warned that if anything happened, everyone in the mansion would be worried. All at once, the maids warned the master not to act rashly, able to sense danger. Toishi noticed the poisoned tea, but if it had been prepared for Mal or Furumu, he would not have kept his composure either. They were like family to him now, and he sincerely apologized for making everyone worry. Toishi felt at home, and Fremu said she and Mabel had already made dinner. Back at the mansion, Toishi immediately felt better, and even his fatigue was gone. When he came out of the bathroom, he saw Mal drinking something from a bottle. Alarmed, Toichi rushed to the girl and asked what was in the bottle. Mal smiled mysteriously and told him he would hardly sleep tonight because her body was now ready to explode from the inside. A few days have passed since Furamo began working at the mansion. Waking up, she decided to try her best this morning. Mabel said she'd make breakfast and Uncle would set the table. Ferrum's job was to change the sheets in the bedroom, and though it was a lot of work, she was glad to do it. The former slave stepped into the room and apologized to the master and mistress for intruding. She walked in on the young people in an intimate act just as Marl asked Toi if he liked maid costumes. The hero said it was too much, but Marl said his body disagreed because one move had left him embarrassed, and she closed the door behind her. Let's ask her if she changed the sheets. Faramu said the master would be in the bedroom for a while, so she would change them later. Surprised, Mabel asked what he was doing there so late, and the former slave answered that it was too early for her to know. Mabel resentfully reminded Firmu that she was the head maid, but Firmu insisted on doing other work. Mabel was so excited she dropped the water bucket. Later, the head maid found the gentleman at the dinner table, completely exhausted. Mabel asked about the owner's health and offered to cook him something light if needed, but Tuishi refused, saying he was physically exhausted and just wanted to live in peace. Mabel assumed the gentleman was tired because of Princess Calanella and offered to help him, while Faramathata thought it best to leave him alone. Just then, Jack came into the room and reminded Mabel she had left the cauldron unattended on the fire, scolding her for making too many mistakes. Still an inexperienced maid, who knew little, the girl said she could not do the job like her uncle yet, but wanted special skills, and Jack offered Tuishi onigiri. Mabel found Marl's warm smile comforting, and Firamu's large breasts seemed healing to look at. Mabel wished she had one of those qualities so she could be a better person. The maid offered the hero a massage to help ease his fatigue. Mabel began massaging the collar area of her master's neck. Despite her repeated efforts, she did little to help Tuishi. He turned to the head maid and asked her to press a little harder during the massage because she was a girl, not a child. Mabel said resentfully that this was all she could do. When Toishi suggested the girl walk on his back with her feet, the maid was very surprised because she had never imagined it. He couldn't understand why Mabel was so surprised, since this kind of massage is common in his homeland, and he found nothing strange about it. Moved by the man's words, the girl slipped off her shoes and granted his wish. This massage method proved more beneficial, and Toishi enjoyed it. Mabel liked it as much as the owner did. Under her feet, she could feel the young man's body heat. Occasionally, the maid asked about Tuishishi's condition, thrilled at the thought that she was trampling on the country's hero. Toichi asked Mabel to attack harder, and she obeyed, feeling a wonderful rush. Mal stepped into the room and was surprised to see the maid firmly stomping on Toishi's back. At last, she realized it was a massage and felt annoyed that she didn't have the power to heal. Otherwise, she would have helped the hero recover. Someone replied to Ishii that recovery magic was helpful, but things were also quite good without it. Annoyed, Marl called him a pervert and wondered if he really liked being stepped on by a girl. After the massage ended, Toshi thanked Mabel for taking part. The head maid felt very pleased with herself for helping the master, and the realization made her blush. Turning to the gentleman, she said she would be happy to give him another massage like that if he needed one. Mal was furious at Mabel for those words, and Toisha felt uneasy about it. Mal pushed the young man onto his stomach and climbed onto his back. She wanted to step on it too, and Tui said it was just a massage, and he had no fetish for it. Marl is heavy, but the girl ignored Tuishi and began dancing on the boy's back. Tuishi begged Marl to stop, then quietly said his fatigue had disappeared. As if by magic, he had never felt so comfortable being stepped on. Jack told Firmum, who was standing outside the door, that it was okay for Tuishi and Marl to be together, but the girl disagreed. After committing the crime of attempting to kill her master, she thinks he shouldn't worry about it, and she enjoys watching the master and mistress. Shaking his head, the old man said he hoped his niece would not suddenly develop odd habits. Cries for help echoed through the settlement, and a buzzing filled the air. Toichi felt alarm and wondered what was happening. Spotting the insects, he unleashed a barrage of magical energy to destroy the hostile force. A swarm of insects appears to have hit an invisible wall, causing the monsters to fall to the ground. No one expected anything different from the hero. Moral warned that with that force, they could destroy the nest in an instant, and next time they would kill them all. The day before, Toishi and Mal came up with an interesting idea. To earn some extra money at the guild, they accepted a request from the residents of Vieto village. Early the previous morning, Twishi received a call from the voice of God. He asked them not to ignore him and to listen, because he had something important to tell the young man. The voice warned that a great flood would come in 2 months, and he had to tell everyone else. Twishi asked Mal what caused the great flood. The girl said nothing was strange about it, but Tuish wanted to hear every detail of the flood. Mal explained the great flood was a recurring event in which monsters swept across the land, happening about every 20 years, with the damage varying by place and time. And in the last flood, a vast number of monsters moved toward the capital of Alfin and caused severe destruction. 20 years ago, she was still a child. The maids were in tears. The number of palace guards was cut, and many could not return home. But she noticed all this only much later. The girl asked why Tui Shisan Li had started talking about this flood, and the hero said a mysterious voice from God had told him about it. Marl was surprised to learn he was an oracle, and Tuishi said it would be best for him to learn everything from the kingdom, no matter what. At the palace, he will announce that a great flood will happen in 2 months. Few in the palace believed him, even though he was a hero. Jack warned Tuishi that if rumors about this spread, he could be accused of rioting, and the hero said it would be very hard for him to prove otherwise. Telling people he heard about the flood from God will make everyone think he's crazy. Tuishi asked the butler to arrange an appointment with Santaku, and he said that with the Marquis' support, they could also ask the temple for help. Marl added that the capital temple had enough priests who could hear the eye of God, so if Tuishi spoke with them, Marquis Zontak would not ignore it, and Jack promised to report everything to the Marquis. With 2 months until the Great Flood, they began hunting monsters and earning money to get better gear and grow stronger before it arrived. Meanwhile, Mal and Tuishi used magic to finish clearing the village of insects. They fought so many monsters that they were both exhausted when the fight ended. Tuishui was surprised at how many materials the mission yielded. Tuishui wanted to put everything in the warehouse. It was high-quality sweet honey and the pupae, larvae, and eggs of the giant hornet, all of which could be sold for a lot of money. A group of young men destroyed a large hornet's nest and decided to give the spoils to the villagers. Grateful for the help, they thanked the adventurers. The villagers were relieved to learn their village was now safe, as the adventurers had finished the job quickly. The adventurers should have asked the guild for help sooner. Marl told the hero she first saw the request as a chance to make money. She never realized these materials could make so many people happy. Being an adventurer was great, and Toishi fully agreed with her. The guild received a decent reward for killing 341 hornets. It was 95 gold coins, 9 silver coins, and 2 copper coins. Many young people were pleasantly surprised by how much they earned from a single request, and adventuring became profitable. They collected honey, larvae, and pupae, which were seen as costly ingredients. Tuishi reached level 20, while Mal reached level 11 and attained the rank of an average adventurer. They wanted to get stronger because they didn't know how many monsters might appear during the flood. Tuishi hugged Mal and told her she had done a good job today. They both warmly welcomed the young masters to the estate, and Moral told Mabel that they had brought them quality ingredients. Then Toishi pulled a huge doll out of the storage room and handed it to the confused Mabel. The head maid was terrified, so the hero had to apologize for scaring her. Remaining indifferent for a time, she had to eat monster meat. She said she and Mabel would cook dinner together, but the head maid immediately refused to eat it, and Mal and Tui had saved up money by completing a guild request, and now needed to buy a good weapon. Meanwhile, Jack turned to Zantaku and relayed the hero Tuishi's request. The Marquis said he would look into it. Mal turned to Tuishi and asked if they would go on a quest. Today, the young man said there was a workshop in the mansion and he wanted to try making his own weapon before the flood, and the girl agreed. A little surprised that the hero knew blacksmithing and alchemy, she watched Toishi thank the girl for the food and say it was high time to learn. Entering the workshop, he looked around with pleasure. Everything he needed was there. Mal peered into the workshop to see what was in the forge. Toichi suggested the girl learn alchemy because the alchemy table was next to the forge. Mal willingly agreed to handle the alchemy while the young man worked in the forge. They would see what they had achieved, and Toichi thought that if Mal had chosen this, it would be worth keeping an eye on her, since she would be a great help if she mastered alchemy. Now that Toichi has increased his rank and earned 19 skill points, he will spend 15 to raise a skill to level 5 and master blacksmithing because he needs a powerful weapon. If he releases the weapon on the market, he will make both himself and Mal stronger, and creating weapons is a dream for any man. To start, Toichi decided to design a dagger and was curious what he'd get at level 1. After that, he lit a fire, and because of his skills, Toichi already knew how to forge metal and use tools. The hero noticed the workshop furnace was filled with magic, and the fire flared up as soon as he used his power. He heated the metal over the fire and saw it had turned out well. Next, he picked up a blacksmith's hammer to shape the metal. Rising in rank gave the young man more strength and dexterity, so forging became easy, and hotter metal was easier to work. After shaping the blade, Toichi quenched the metal in water and kept working it until it was ready. Toichi sharpened the dagger on a wet stone, then fashioned a leather and wood handle, and the young man was surprised he finished so quickly. In just 1 hour, he made a good quality weapon from scratch. From that moment, the hero raised their skill level and began making daggers. Second-level weapons took a long time to make. Reaching the 3rd level unlocked magic, and at the 4th level, they learned how to boost magical power. The weapon quality became excellent, and the hero tried to craft a magical item. With each level he gained, forging a blade took less time, and his knowledge steadily increased. His head was splitting from so much information, but he kept forging as if possessed, and realized he had already made dozens of different weapons. Surprisingly, Marl didn't complain about the noise, even though she was in the neighboring workshop. There seemed to be some kind of magical isolation here. Marl entered the blacksmith's shop, happily announced she had finally managed to obtain the magic medicine, and was surprised by the many finished weapons. Marla stood beside Furamu, who was equally surprised by the number and quality of the weapons Toichi had made. Now able to defeat monsters, the hero noticed the two admiring a flawless dagger. At this level of blacksmithing, he could forge sacred and magical swords, and his methods for working demonic materials had changed so he could gather the materials he needed. Marl admitted with admiration that Toichi was doing very well, and the young man let her take the perfect quality dagger for herself. That was the best thing he did today. The hero turned to Furum and asked if she wanted anything for self-defense. She saw not only daggers, but also other objects. She reminded the young men that slaves, especially criminal ones, were not allowed to carry weapons because they might turn a blade on their master, and she could handle them all with her bare hands. Pressing the gifted dagger to her chest, Moral said that even if it were a precious stone made by the greatest master, it looked better and was more pleasing to the eye. Toichi wasn't sure if giving Marl a gift was worth it or if he had done the right thing by offering the weapon to Furam. Meanwhile, Marl handed Toichi a bottle of the recovery potion she had made and asked him to accept it to thank him for the dagger he had given her. After the young man thanked her, Marvel said it had been fun and that being an adventurer was interesting, but she was also curious about alchemy and planned to study the recovery potion's effects. After 1 day, Marl had raised her skill only to level 1 and at lunch the girls told the hero they had fish today. Today, Toishi's skill reached level 5 after a full day of forging, and the blacksmith hammer rose a level. The hero now plans to craft powerful weapons to prepare for the flood. A few days later, Toshi and Jack headed to the Zontak mansion, which was several times larger than their house. The butler knocked softly on the marquee office door, opened it for them, and Jack announced he had brought a hero. Tui told him why he had come, and Zontak said he already knew, but that was only a small part of his purpose. Oracles and temples confirmed his words about the flood, and now all countries are sharing available information. It is already certain that the Great Flood will occur. Flooding varies by location and time, and last time it caused massive damage to Alfin's capital, with Twishi the country's only hero. Smiling, the young man said he had something in that case. Opening his treasury, he revealed to the marquis the vast number of sabers and swords he had made. The young man said he had made a large batch of about 30 weapons to boost their power, and suggested the Kylendel troops use them, since it was still possible to add them to the army. Zontak realized the sabers would be very useful to the cavalry and promised to deliver them to the address, but he wondered whether they could be produced for the whole country, rather than just for the cavalry troops and adventures. Tuishi agreed, saying he only makes blades and that someone else should make the handle. Making a spear or blade isn't hard, but the handle is a real hassle. If the country wants to mass-produce magical weapons, it will need magical tools. After the hero gave samples, Zontak found they were also very well made. He told the boy it would be fine if he kept cooperating with this country. Zontak felt they could still survive the flood, but Toishi said he did not want to give all this away for free. After all, he used iron, mithril, calcum, crystals, and black steel to make weapons, and he required payment for producing them. The hero hoped they could reach an agreement with Zontak, who could make blades quickly, so they needed to get the materials as soon as possible. At last, the Marquis and the hero shook hands, and Zontak said he hoped the army and the adventurers would overcome the flood together. That evening, before bed, Marl asked Toishi a question. She asked him to teach her how to use magic. Marl wanted to be ready for the Great Flood too. Maple asked Marl what she was reading, and Marl said she was studying a spell book. An ancient book sat there, and when the headmaid asked Marl to show its pages, Marl refused. She remembered going to Tuishi and asking him to teach her magic. A great flood is coming, and she must be prepared, so she is determined to learn magic no matter what it takes. It would be great if she could use magic. Tuisha agreed with the girl and started teaching. He offered to buy her a spell book called Primitive Magic. Pleased by Tuishi's curiosity and desire to study magic and alchemy, Marl said he would feel much better if she helped him instead of fighting, and he firmly assured her he would help. Tuishi instructed him to clasp his hands and interlace his fingers, then sent magical power into one hand and the other to spread it through him. Their fingers were laced together. He had large hands, and she had small ones. The hero asked Marl to focus the magic in her left hand, and Marl felt the energy flow into her. Toichi asked if she was hurting, but Marl said she was fine. A powerful surge of magical energy swept through Marl. Marl could transmit a huge amount of magical power, and she had magical abilities too. To make the wish, she told Marl that she must now absorb the magical power she had received and focus it into her left hand again. Taking the power from her right hand, he found that the more magic he gave, the more he took, and it became harder for him. At last, the magic passed through the young people's bodies and connected, and Marl's magic slowly began adapting to Tui Shizu's body. Her magic warmed him from within. The feeling was unusual. He floated in space, wrapped in Mars's warmth and love, and the girl felt the same. Tohichi decided this was Marl's soul, since primitive magic linked the hearts of two people. It felt odd and eerie, floating like ghosts in a silent space. Tuishi anxiously called out to Tomorrow, who lay with her eyes closed. Rushing, Tuishi used too much magic, so he now had to cast recovery magic because Marl could have been hurt by her own stupidity. After the magic flowed through him, strength rose inside him, their combined power already feeling familiar to his body. And with Tuishi's magic, he sensed Marl's soul. She must have felt his energy when he used magic for the first time. On a whim, the girl called Tuishi an incubus. When the hero asked Marl how she felt, she said she felt a little strange, but then realized something. Marl then suggested they switch places and start a new session. Tuishi realized this strange, tickle-like feeling was clearly different from the previous one. The hero realized at once that it was happening and that she was draining his magical power. The princess told the young man to stay still. Tuishi asked them to stop because he has more magical powers. Meanwhile, the girl lay on her back and then turned onto her side, moving with passion. Primitive magic that transfers magical power and circulates forces between people is dangerous. Strength surged through Tuishi, and when he checked his status, he saw Marl had drained about 100 units of magic power, which was significant damage, but the girl should be feeling better. Their primitive magic skills were at level 1, and raising them in that state would instantly turn the magic into an absorbable power that could be used for evil. Tuishi told Marl he was glad they could use magic. The princess turned the page and said there was more to read, so they could continue. A whole night lay ahead, and simple magic suited nighttime pleasures, but Marl's insatiable appetite made Tuishi regret it. This morning, Tuishi woke up with a headache. While serving breakfast, she wished Tuishi a good morning and said she hoped he had a good night. The hero fell silent and muttered something indistinct in response. After the dagger incident, he felt awkward when the girl refused the gift and called herself a slave. Since this could not go on any longer, Talisha asked Former directly what she thought of him. The girl said firmly that he was the country's hero and she was his slave. Expecting the same answer, the young man said it differently. He refuses to see her as a slave, even if that is technically her status, because to him, she is an important person in the mansion and a member of his family. She told everyone he came from a place farther away than she could imagine, and after he received the mansion, he found a place to rest peacefully. So he wants this place to be the same for Furumo. Firm replied that she got up early to take care of him. Marl and Mabel were now talking with Jack. These days were already quiet and unlike the days of her childhood. He gave her all of this to everyone, giving her the chance to feel like a human being. People wondered whether the former murderer despised her for that, and the young man said he would not hate anyone for such a thing. Furumu said she would rather he hated her since they were opponents, but despite the awkward situation, she still could not hate Tuishi. He saved her from those bloody days when she was a mercenary. Now, she is completely different. If nothing changed, she'd lose heart, slowly lose her mind, and have no future. At first, she seethed with resentment. Faramu brushed her fingertips across Toy's cheek and said everything was different now. Marl entered the dining room, and Furamu immediately began preparing breakfast for her. After the maid left, Marl turned to Toishi. Nudging him, she asked to start providing him with some services too. She was interested in what Faramu had told him, and Toy quickly finished his breakfast and said he was heading to the workshop. The hero felt his heart about to leap out of his chest. He forced himself to calm down and tell himself it was just a joke and that Mara always came first for him. Soon, Tuishi met with Marquis Zantak again, who said his announcement of the flood's start was meant to call on the nation's hero to boost morale. Tuishi realized the Marquis wanted him to speak, even though he had asked not to speak. Zontak apologized, saying their country was not in a position to ask him, though he knew there was no one else to ask. The hero agreed but warned that if anything happened to Marlena's friends, the entire kingdom would turn against him. Toishi counted on things not being too bad, on winning the kingdom's favor, and on getting a much sturdier mansion after the flood, possibly even an entire territory. Let them try not to notice his successes. Zontak handed Toishi a paper with his performance schedule, and because of the problem with Mal, the Marquis wanted to make a suggestion. After hearing Toi, Shi had no objection to being present tomorrow. Mal fled Miss Cronia to avoid a political marriage, and now she will face all her opponents, so they should listen to Zontox's offer. The proposal was based on the fact that Mal, the first princess of the Kingdom of Micronia and a devoted admirer of heroes, left her country after receiving a divine revelation. She encountered the great hero and helped him on his journey. The love between a hero and a princess feels like a beautiful story, and people in both countries will see them as fairy tale heroes. Mal doubted there would be any trouble since she had fled the country without permission, and it would be much harder for her family to make a fuss if she said she had done the right thing. They are on very thin ice. The flood could cause unrest if she chooses a hero as her spouse. Her engagement to the prince from a neighboring country will be dissolved, and all the inhabitants of the kingdom of Calendale will witness their engagement. They can also announce their engagement with speeches. Although she ran away from home, she is grateful to Tui for helping her. Mal said that for some time now, Toisia has been taking every woman in turn as his concubine, and the hero replied that she is his only one, and that lately he has been thinking only about the flood. The hero's speeches about the flood were coming up, and they increased weapon production. But many tasks remained, especially making every inhabitant of the mansion stronger. Toishi and Mal returned home, and Forum moved to meet them at the entrance. The hero asked the maid to join him in the living room to talk. Everyone in the mansion gathered, and Toishi said he wanted to talk about the great flood. He thought the walls would hold, but you can never be sure what might happen, like a thief getting in through the fireplace. We need to take some measures. Handing the dagger to Ferrum, the hero said that last time Ferrum refused it because she saw herself as a slave. But this time, she must accept it because it will let her protect everyone while he is away from the mansion. For a moment, he looked very embarrassed. She said she used to be a killer, but now she's a slave and can't own a weapon. Toichi raised his voice and said this was not a request, but an order. The girl took the dagger from the hero's hands and promised to protect the mansion with her life, and Toishi told her he wanted her to protect herself as well. Though she sees herself as a slave, a knight of the kingdom of Calendale orders her to protect herself. Keep yourself and everyone in this mansion safe. Determination hardened the former slave's gaze as she vowed to carry out his order. Mal and Furumu relaxed in the pool while the princess said the maid had become a concubine. Furumu said that if she ever got pregnant, she would not force Toishitu and dure it. And when Mal stared at her in horror, she explained that after all, she was a concubine, and maybe Mal would want to become one too. Mala replied, surprised she would consider it. Furmo promised the hero she would do her best. Leaning toward him as he lay in bed, she apologized, and he muttered that he was glad to see her, but he couldn't hug anyone but Mal. Amut reassured the young man and told him he was a man and should not worry. Realizing she sounded like a demon whispering sweet words, the hero felt there was no turning back. Faramu asked the master how far they would travel with him. Then they shared a long kiss. Despite feeling awkward, the girl liked it a lot. She told Toishi she was very happy. Their actions grew more passionate, with shouts and groans. Toishi thought that for a movie, she was much older than Mal, and her breasts were so large they shook with her movements. Their passion reached its peak. Exhausted, Fora fell onto her back and closed her eyes. Tui asked how the girl was feeling, and she said she felt very well. Tuishi could not understand what she meant, when she told the hero it was her duty to serve him. Mao said she seemed to be the only one doing well so far and would keep trying until she satisfied him. They spent the whole night like that, their physical closeness drawing their hearts closer, but an anxious feeling crept into Tuishich's chest. In the morning, a knock came at the door, and Mal's voice asked whether they had had enough fun. Mal entered the room and asked her why she was breaking her promise. The princess said she wasn't breaking any rules. All she wants is to join them. Twishy had not expected things to turn out this way. The hero lay between two sleeping girls, convinced it was every man's dream, but for some reason he felt guilty. Both girls opened their eyes and at the same time asked the hero if he was ready. Finding the gentleman asleep at his workbench in his workshop, Jack covered him with a blanket. About 20 days after they learned of the Great Flood, Toishi felt near death, and Mal tried to revive him with medicine for his exhaustion. Lately, Marl has been using Toishi as a test subject for her potions, and the poison has no effect on him, though it still causes side effects. Marl asked the boy how he was feeling, and he said he was unusually tired and wanted to know the potion's side effects. Marl calmed the hero down and said it was just an addiction. Then Tuishi showed Marl the weapon blades that were packed in boxes. After finishing the blades for Zontic, Marla asked the young man if he had made himself a new weapon. Tuishi showed Marl a beautiful sword he forged from two alloys, divine silver and crystal, by trial and error. The princess heard of divine silver for the first time, and the hero replied that it was often called halcum, an alloy obtained by refining mithril, and also known as true silver. This sword has the strength of halcum while keeping the lightness of mithril, and the blade's core is made of crystal, which increases the effectiveness of magic. When the girl asked about her sword, she told him his goal now was to strengthen their weapons, and that she would most likely use the mithril dagger he had given her at that time. Reforging the mithril dagger, he fashioned a new saber for her to match it, and the girl noticed the weapon's extraordinary beauty. Mal thanked Tuishi sincerely for this work. Trying the saber, she swung it a few times, and the hero thought she was cute, but the scene was quite scary. He imagined Mal would look good, wielding both a dagger and a saber. He then remembered Furamu was a skilled fencer who could teach Mal to fight, and Mal was delighted and invited her to train in the backyard. Since Tuishi began preparing for the Great Flood, he made weapons and earned money. Wherever he went, he kept preparing without pause. With more guild requests to destroy monsters, he used skill points during preparations to raise his magic to level 5 and learn powerful spells, and he maxed both magical and physical enhancements, leaving his status surprisingly strong. Mal's training had not helped him. He was level 31 now and wanted to see what the princess had learned in that time. Marl made steady progress and grew stronger, and under Ferum's training, she reached the 3rd level of swordsmanship and learned to dual wield. They were ready, and amid the tense moments of the Great Flood, the day had come for the hero to appear. When Mal donned the armor, Tuishi said she looked like a princess, and Mal reminded him that she was a princess and he looked like a hero. Tuishi laughed and said he was the hero. Then he and Mal put on their mithril armor and waited. React with surprise at Mal's revealing armor and asked Xantica whether that could really protect a girl. The Marquise explained it was not ordinary cloth, but a mesh woven from invisible mithril that would protect far better than armor made from metal sheets. And since the enchantment boosted physical defense, he thought it was superior to his. He announced that the ceremony would begin soon and asked whether the hero had the text with him. Zontac began to read that for the first time in 50 years, a hero had appeared in their kingdom, and they held a ceremony to celebrate the hero's wedding. But something else important loomed. A great flood was coming. The Marquis expected the ceremony would draw a lot of attention and make him nervous, but in fact, Tuishi was the one who felt nervous. Residents filled the city streets, waiting for the hero's wedding ceremony. Tuishi and Mal rode in the carriage through a cheering crowd of citizens. Many thought the hero looked unusual, and the girl beside him was very cute. People in the crowd discussed the hero's abilities, and many believed he was a troll crusher. He wished he felt uneasy about all the talk about his personality. Marl happily told Tuishi that his hero nickname would now be known to everyone, and that news of his heroism would spread farther. But Tuishi felt things were going wrong, though his dignity remained intact. After the procession of people from the castle to the city walls, a great flood was finally announced. The emperor told the residents of the capital Alfin that he had an important announcement for them. The oracle has a vision that the great flood will strike in 2 months. The citizens do not worry, because this time someone will protect them all. Tuishi Masubo is the first hero their kingdom has seen in a long time. New to adventuring, the hero single-handedly defeated 3 trolls, earned the title Troll Scorch, and the king called on the inhabitants of the kingdom of Calendale to welcome him. He will tell the capital's residents that they have also begun developing and producing new types of weapons, which will strengthen their army. Also with them is the one who helped the hero during his travels, the first princess of the neighboring country, Molière Vran Miscronia. After joining the oracle and leaving her homeland, she now supports Tuishi in all his efforts. As the oracle's true saint, her appearance with the hero guarantees their kingdom will survive the flood. The king wanted to remind everyone in the kingdom about something. To remind them of their kingdom's wealth and power, the king called on everyone to fight the flood for the sake of their families and loved ones. United, the crowd vowed to defend Calendale. Zontak told the emperor he had given his speech beautifully. By contrast, Toishi and Marl could hardly hold back their laughter. He laughed at the idea of a holy oracle, finding it absurd to call the man who jumped on him the first day a saint, and they even called him a hero. In any case, all they could do now was wait for the flood. Marl asked the young man what they were fighting for. He's not even a citizen of this country or a resident of this city, and they can handle the flood without him. He told Ishi that he had his own reasons, whether to test his strength or to receive a reward from the king. One thing is certain. If he escapes, he will regret it for the rest of his life, and guilt over the inhabitants' deaths will constantly haunt him. Marlask spoke with a trembling voice, though he could still die. He wished he'd said anything was possible, but there was also a chance no monster in the flood would be stronger than him. By fighting, he could protect her and everyone in the mansion. Residents then spotted Tuishi and Marl on the wall. They waved happily to them and said the hero and the saint were a wonderful couple. Marl thanked everyone and said they now seemed popular. Tuishi said he did not want to be their hero. Marl's charming smile made the hero wish he could always see it. Reassuring the girl, he promised they would survive this great flood and protect her. Darkness swept across the sky, and a strong wind began to blow. Tishi and Marl realized a great flood was starting. A few days ago, the Knights of Alphen, the army of the Kingdom of Calendale, held a strategic council at the Fourth Wall. Reports said the kingdom held the fortress cities of Crossroad, Glodus, and Berlin, and past flood data suggested they could hold out for at least a week or two, possibly up to a month. The only problem was the distribution of forces. Start by considering Gladys and Berlin. If they fall, demons will pour down from the mountains, and moving troops will take time. Long battles will exhaust the army, and mistakes in numbers will cause defeat. So decide how many troops to send and where. Zontek planned to hand the hero temporary control of the capital. Toichi asked in confusion why it was him, since he was the leader of the knights. The Marquis insisted that when the flood came, he should use magic to push the monster hordes away from the fourth wall. The idea sounded tempting, so the hero decided to try it. Mal anxiously asked the boy if he was sure, and Twishy replied that he had been preparing his weapon and leveling up for this exact moment and was ready. The magic he raised to level 5 while preparing would help him. Today, she was on the fourth wall, and the day everyone had been waiting for had arrived. A deafening explosion rang out overhead. You could see various monsters through the flames and smoke. Ishish gained 2 levels after using the magic giant explosion. The pure magic attack fired long-range projectiles, and its power could carve a crater about 100 meters in radius. Moral believed that such force would stop the flood instantly, and that the hero would be satisfied with that outcome. Toishi said the monsters that appeared today were likely not the enemy's main force. They attacked in a coordinated way, using the gaps between explosions. This is only the beginning of the Great Flood. A massive black hole formed in the sky, and moments later, a monster's paw reached out from it. Something huge and terrifying was crawling out of the hole, and a real disaster seemed imminent. Mal wordly asked Wishy if he could defeat it, and the hero decided he could not let the giant escape and activated the Big Bang magic. Part of the monster's paw rose high into the air, and blood spurted beneath the city walls. Toishi decided to leave no trace of the demon, and launched another explosion into the huge hole. None of the knights had ever seen a hand that large. It seemed the hero had used magic to tear off part of the monster's hand. If the giant's whole body showed up here, they would be at a loss. And at the same time, Twishi noticed he had gained 3 full levels from the fight. Not even the hero knew what kind of monster it was, so he tried to push aside the obsessive thoughts because he had to defeat the remaining monsters. The Great Flood is only beginning. Hidden behind the door, Mabel asked her uncle about the black sphere, and Jack said he had never seen anything like it. For a moon, it was noticed that when this hand disappeared, there were fewer monsters. Mabel hoped nervously that the mansion would keep them safe, and Furumu said the monsters were much more active now, so all they could do was defend themselves and wait. They have to trust their masters. After the giant was killed, the monster stopped advancing, and by midday, everything was probably quiet. That huge monster led the others to attack the capital. At 29, wishing she could live freely in another world, they went to the royal capital to save another city. A few days later, they reached the fortress city of Berlin, west of the royal capital, and during the journey, the hero learned to ride a horse. Mal was with him as always, but here they had to meet a dragon. Seeing Mal trembling, Toshi asked her to stay put while he faced the fire-breathing dragon. Reluctant to let Tuyishi go alone, the girl objected, but the hero assured her it would be a fun victory and that he would use the wind magic class. His step quickened. Before defeating the dragon, the hero had to clear the flying creatures that accompanied it by activating the Line of Light. Powerful magic easily destroyed the small monsters. A huge stream of fire shot from the dragon toward the hero, and Twishy said he was starting to like it. They were now very close to the monster. Using magic, focused energy struck the monster's head, and the dragon's head separated from its body. The hero felt pleased after defeating the strong monster. Mal did not believe Toysha when he said he was only a little worried, since he could now make something useful from the dragon's remains. But the girl wondered who would benefit if only a wet spot remained of him. Tuishi only wanted to protect Mal and keep her out of danger, and because it was faster for him to defeat the dragon alone, he humbly listened when the princess asked him not to act so foolishly again. Pulling out a potion, she forced Tuishi to drink it as punishment. The girl told the hero that if the city had acted properly, he would not have gotten away with it, suggesting they valued human life more than defeating a monster. and then they went to glove days. Ishii decided to let the wind blow everything away and activated the force voltage, believing it was better to die peacefully without pain. He also defeated the demons in the city, destroying them completely. Reaching level 61 slowed his progress, so he immediately used the excess experience to max out his magic and gained many usable spells. Twishy could now travel great distances instantly, which greatly surprised Mal. The trips also began moving quickly through the transition gates. They returned to the royal capital of Alphin again, and Mal, pulling herself up sweetly, said they could rest a little now thanks to the transition gate. Tomorrow suggested they head back to the mansion the same way because she really wanted a bath. The hero told the princess he was going to Crossroads. A report from the Knights of Crossroad, part of the royal army, says large numbers of demons have grown wings during the day and their numbers are increasing, so measures must be taken. Our strength isn't enough to defeat all the demons, and the number of wounded keeps rising as their strength runs out. Mal remembered the innkeeper they had taken care of, and the members of the Adventurers Guild, and said she would go with Toishi as well. The hero replied that she should not go to such a dangerous place because of the demons appearing, the number of wounded, and finally, the hands reaching up from the abyss. The moral is that the hero cannot be stopped, and no matter how hard you try, he will keep going. Her only request was that he run away and be careful if things got really bad. At Crossroads, Tuishi realized the situation was serious. He spotted a large swarm of different winged monsters and attacked them immediately. Help from the royal capital should arrive for Walt any minute. Nothing was visible, not even their shadow. Ethan focused on the fighter who was fiercely battling the monsters. Ethan greeted Toishi warmly and said they hadn't seen each other in a long time. The hero also recognized the adventurer who had fought the trolls alongside them. Ethan said Toishi looked very good, and Captain Waltz approached the young man and greeted the hero. He asked to call Toishi simply a warrior, and the hero agreed and asked what was happening. And the captain said the large spill was causing demons that normally stay hidden to start emerging. He could not tell where so many of them had come from. Tuishi praised them for holding out and told them to rely on him now. Activating the force voltage, he said he was back at the crossroads. Seeing such powerful magic, Eaton said Tuishi was growing increasingly distant from the human. Regardless, if they don't get through the spill first, it won't make history. The hero saw a black sphere appear here too, and everyone froze in anticipation. Using the scanning skill, Toishi doubled the magic. A sense of danger sounded an alarm in his head, so he shouted to his comrades to run. But Eden said he had the strength of 1,000 men and saw no reason to leave. Tuishi deflected the ball, and in an instant the sphere struck him in the chest. Eaton and Waltz calling his name was the last thing he heard. Tuishi forced himself up onto one knee, leaning on his sword, and realized the black sphere had appeared after all. Rushing to the young man, the captain asked if he was all right. The hero said everything was very bad, and doubted he could fight in that state if the enemy appeared in the capital. Before that happens, he plans to hit the black sphere. Tuishi triggered the largest explosion. A black spear flew straight at him, but that was supposed to happen, and now every blow was coming at him. It meant the entity was still alive. Using his skill, he heard the message sent to the monster, and headquarters ordered the elimination of everyone trying to disrupt the balance. Then Toishi saw that huge monster with massive paws. His opponents were not ordinary adventurers. Despite everyone attacking him, he aimed at the hero. On the battlefield, a message addressed to Captain Waltz ordered the adventurers to be demoted below rank A. She couldn't even follow their talk about destroying the balance. He only knew the monster was targeting him. I wondered how much magic power he had left in reserve. He noticed parts of the monster's body were damaged by its full power blast, so the attack was not very effective. He wished he had realized the monster had delayed him for a moment. The lion rushes forward to attack. He had time to spare. A powerful attack from the monster struck the hero, who felt a strange sensation. A black arrow pierced his body. The monster's terrible face loomed over him, and she screamed too. Confused, he felt like hundreds of arrows had pierced him, and he was hanging in the air. Toishi stared into the monster's burning eyes and knew he would die here. Running away and avoiding any fights seemed best, since he wasn't even from this world. Blood pooled around Toishi as he thought this might be the end of the game. Marl's ghostly figure hovered above his body, and he wondered why she was there. Toishi thought Marl's magic was inside him. She asked if he was crying, and the hero did not deny it. Feeling guilty for not keeping his promise, he vowed to protect Marl and the others in the mansion. Marl came up to him and said he would not lose here. Toishi grabbed his sword in a panic and told Marl to wait for him. The royal warriors fired many arrows at the monster, while Toishi stood in front of it. The crusade arrived to help alongside the Alphanite Order, unable to stand aside any longer, and Toishi thanked Commander Waltz for the covering fire. Raising his sword, the hero used his last strength to charge the lion. Toishi realized his strange feeling came from the monster's attack. No sound came from his movements, and when his paws brushed the ground, no dust rose, which explained his odd feeling. Confident that even if the situation got out of control, it could still be resolved, Toishi activated regeneration magic. He decided that even if the monster moved silently, its tracks would not disappear. So by using his ability to see tracks, he could follow the black lion and strike before it could move. Quickly, the hero executed the move and struck the monster, realizing the maneuver needed to be repeated. The monster still believed it could devour the man standing in front of it. Using magic, Toishi Delta strikes the enemy with a painful blow. The monster let out a wild roar. The hero's sword kept cutting into the powerful monster. Finally, a precise, powerful strike severed the lion's head from its body. The hero sat down awkwardly beside that disgusting head and asked who he was. Is he passing information to the hand that appeared in the capital? He also heard the word headquarters. It is the unit that gives orders to the Black Lion and the Hand. What does this headquarters mean? And who wants to destroy the balance? Prodding the lion's head with the tip of his sword, he ordered the lion to speak. The transmission was cut off. Toishi were deep in thought. He believed the headquarters wanted to capture anyone planning to destroy the balance, those aiming to unleash massive chaos, attack every country, and reduce the population. We need to know who they are, what their goal is, and what he must fight first. They are not monsters or units. It is most likely something more. At that moment, the king's warriors approached him, accused him of recklessness, and asked if he was all right. He admitted his guilt, but he didn't care because he could still protect Marl and everyone here, and that was enough.